Chapter 398. Xiao Lingyu only remembered that this wine had many flavors, but he forgot that Qing Xian had mentioned that it was also very strong. Qing Xian had only accompanied him to drink a few bowls at the beginning, but after those few bowls, the 2 jars of wine all ended up in Xiao Lingyu's stomach. At first, Xiao Lingyu drank bowl after bowl out of curiosity. Later, he became a little unconvinced, but in the end his mind became a little muddled. He only knew how to gulp down bowl after bowl, and he didn't even try to savor the taste. This was like a mortal who was already drunk. The more he drank, the more he wanted to drink, but he didn't know why he drank. When he finished the last bowl, Xiao Lingyu's body was already swaying. He looked at Qing Xian with hazy drunken eyes and asked, "Do you have more?" Qing Xian's expression had already returned to normal. He nodded and smiled. "Haha, of course, but I can't give any more to junior brother." Xiao Lingyu's mind was a little muddled. He asked why. Qing Xian seemed to be in a difficult position as he said, "It's not easy to make this wine, and I don't have much left. I can't let junior brother drink it all." Xiao Lingyu waved his arm and said, "How stingy." Qing Xian immediately added, "Junior brother obtained so many armored puppets, but only gave me 1/3. Isn't that stingy?" Xiao Lingyu burped and said, "How about this? 1 armored puppet for 1 bottle of wine. How about that?" Qing Xian was secretly pleased, but he put on an act and said, "That's too little. 100 puppets for 1 bottle is more like it." Xiao Lingyu's face was red, and he kept burping. He seemed to hesitate for a while and said, 50 armored puppets for 1 bottle. If you want to trade, then trade. If you don't want to trade, then forget it." However, Qing Xian said firmly, 100 puppets for 1 bottle. Not 1 less. Xiao Lingyu muttered to herself for a while. She looked as if her neck was too weak to support her head. Finally, she slammed the table and said, "Okay." Qing Xian's originally tense heartstrings suddenly relaxed. The reason why she had treated Xiao Lingyu to a drink was so that she could scheme against Xiao Lingyu. Now, she was close to her goal. This wine was indeed personally brewed by her, so she was very clear that even though Xiao Lingyu wasn't an ordinary cultivator, she would still get drunk after drinking 2 jars. That was why she decided to carry out her plan at the right time. Immediately, Qing Xian took out a dozen jars of wine and placed them on the 4th floor. Xiao Lingyu picked up one of the jars and then pretended to drink from it. Qing Xian originally wanted to stop her, but after thinking about it, she gave up. She knew that if Xiao Lingyu drank another jar, she would at most be drunk for a while longer. However, Qing Xian didn't expect that after Xiao Lingyu raised the jar high, she gently put it down and said, "I seem to have drunk a little too much. It's better if I don't drink anymore." Qing Xian said, "There are 14 jars of wine here. Logically speaking, they should be exchanged for 1,400 armor puppets. Since we're from the same sect, and I'm your senior sister, I'll make it cheaper. I'll only take 1,000 armored puppets from you." However, Xiao Lingyu waved her hands and said, "I won't trade. I won't trade." Qing Xian immediately frowned and asked, "Why won't you trade?" Xiao Lingyu smiled at Qing Xian and said, "I don't feel like drinking anymore, so I won't trade." Qing Xian said angrily, "We made a deal just now. Junior brother, how can you go back on your word?" However, Xiao Lingyu's expression suddenly returned to normal, and the smell of alcohol dissipated. He said calmly, "Senior sister set a trap for me. Do I have to fall into it?" Qing Xian's body trembled, and her eyes flashed. She said, "You're not drunk?" Xiao Lingyu sat back down on the praying mat and said, "Sometimes senior sister thinks too highly of me, but sometimes senior sister thinks too little of me." If he drank another jar, Xiao Lingyu would definitely get drunk. However, he was a cautious person, and he didn't completely trust Qing Xian. How could he get drunk in front of Qing Xian just because he was curious? "You were so cooperative just now. You were deliberately teasing me, right?" Qing Xian asked again, and her tone was a little cold. "Senior sister is allowed to fool me? Can't I fool senior sister as well?" "Yes, I was fooling, not teasing. Senior sister, don't misunderstand." Xiao Lingyu still looked very calm, but his tone was a little strange. Qing Xian was so angry that her body was trembling. Although she tried to restrain herself, in the end, She couldn't restrain the anger in her heart. She shouted, "I'll fight you to the death." Qing Xian was a proud woman who had always been high and mighty, and people couldn't help admiring her. When had she ever been teased like this? Thinking of all the things that happened on the continent of the gods of Mausoleum, she felt wrong for the first time in history. Therefore, after shouting, she didn't use any magic treasures and directly pounced on Xiaolingyu. Xiaolingyu really didn't expect Qing Xian to have such an extreme reaction. This was because he didn't realize that he had dealt a heavy blow to Qing Xian's pride and confidence. In addition, Qing Xian was much faster than him, so he was inevitably pushed down by Qing Xian. Qing Xian was in a state of rage at this time. She had almost completely lost her mind. She grabbed Xiaolingyu's neck and began to exert force with both hands. Although Qing Xian's physical quality was far inferior to Xiaolingyu's, she was still a late-stage immortal emperor. Naturally, her strength wasn't weak. However, cultivators weren't mortals. Even if their necks were broken, they wouldn't die. This woman was crazy. At first, Xiaolingyu had this thought. Then he felt angry. This woman's plan didn't succeed. He didn't scheme against her. Why did she have to ride on his body and attack him? Therefore, Xiaolingyu used his hands to grab Qing Xian's wrists. Then he exerted force with his waist and pushed Qing Xian under his body. In terms of strength, Xiaolingyu was now below the immortal monarch super divine beasts of the demon clan. Otherwise, it would be difficult to find anyone below the immortal supremacy stage who was stronger than him in the entire three realms. Naturally, Qing Xian couldn't compare to him. Xiaolingyu's hands pressed on Qing Xian's wrists. However, his buttocks were sitting on Qing Xian's thighs. Their eyes met. Xiaolingyu could still see the intense anger in Qing Xian's almond-shaped eyes. He had a feeling that if he let go, Qing Xian would definitely attack him even more fiercely. However, Qing Xian's clothes were already in a mess. She didn't wear much to begin with. She only had a red doo-doo on her underwear. This caused her pair of full breasts to be exposed to Xiaolingyu's eyes. Qing Xian was being pressed under his body. Naturally, she kept twisting her body. Her soft thighs rubbed against Xiaolingyu's buttocks. Xiaolingyu's evil fire rose from his lower abdomen. In addition, Xiaolingyu had drunk a lot of wine. The alcohol gradually rose to his head. He felt that it was getting harder and harder for him to control himself. Fortunately, he wasn't a lecherous person. Moreover, his rationality told him that the woman under him wasn't someone to be trifled with. Therefore, he only snorted coldly and reminded Qing Xian to calm down. Then, he jumped up and went downstairs in a flash. If the two of them were still alone, Xiaolingyu guessed that Qing Xian's anger would definitely be difficult to quell. Therefore, he fled. Qing Xian also sat up. However, she gradually calmed down. However, in order to vent her anger, she slammed the wine table into pieces. Damn it! Qing Xian couldn't help but curse again as she tidied up her clothes. Xiaolingyu strolled casually on streets. Not long after, he saw many cultivators in the city gathering in one place. He didn't want to join the fun at first. However, when he heard that there was a weapon refinement grandmaster refining a Dharma treasure on the spot, he followed along. After bypassing 3 streets, Xiaolingyu saw a 10-foot-tall platform temporarily built in the corner of a large crossroad. At this time, an old man in a white robe was holding a ball of blue flame in one hand. His other hand was throwing materials into the ball of flame. It seemed that he was indeed refining something. Xiaolingyu squeezed into the crowd and gradually approached the platform. However, the closer he got, the more he felt that the chaotic primordial fire in his body was showing signs of instability. He was curious. When he got closer, he suddenly realized that the blue flame in the old man's hand was a type of divine fire. Moreover, its quality was extraordinary. No wonder he can refine a divine weapon. He actually has a divine fire and can control it at will. Xiaolingyu didn't get closer to the platform. Instead, he narrowed his eyes and looked over. Xiaolingyu had just arrived for 100 breaths when the old man in the white robe had finished refining all the materials. Then, he was molding the Dharma treasure while engraving groups on it. His movements were fast and smooth. After waiting for less than 100 breaths, the old man suddenly shouted in a low voice. An immortal sword had been successfully refined. Xiao Yu was not an expert in refining, but he had some foundation in refining. He could see that the materials used by the old man were only of middle grade. However, the immortal sword refined by the old man was of high grade. He couldn't help but praise in his heart, as expected of a grandmaster. His work is extraordinary. After the old man finished refining the immortal sword, a cultivator who seemed to have been waiting for a long time slowly walked up to the platform. He first bowed and then said, "I heard that Senior is good at repairing damaged Dharma treasures. Junior has a supreme-grade immortal weapon that has been damaged for many years. Senior, please repair it for me. I will be very grateful." As the cultivator spoke, he had already taken out a small, iron bell-shaped Dharma treasure. There were many inscriptions and mysterious runes carved on the surface of the small, iron bell. It gave off a very mysterious feeling. However, there was a gap at the edge of the bell. Moreover, there were a few clear cracks on the bell. It was obvious that the iron bell-shaped Dharma treasure was not light, and the degree of damage was quite serious. Under normal circumstances, a Dharma treasure that was damaged to such an extent was almost scrapped. Ordinary cultivators would refine the materials inside and either refine it again or refine other Dharma treasures. The old man in the white robe took the small bell with a smile. Then, his eyes were overflowing with light. He carefully looked at the small bell and said, "If you want to repair this Dharma treasure, you need to provide 1 kilogram of meteorite iron sand. Junior has prepared it." The cultivator came prepared and immediately handed a jade bottle to the old man in the white robe. Chapter 399. Repairing a magic treasure was actually not very difficult. However, it was difficult to make a magic treasure as powerful as it was before it was damaged. The white-robed old man had only observed the small iron bell for a while, but he was already confident that he could repair this top-grade immortal equipment. Xiao Yu was extremely impressed, because in that short moment, the white-robed old man should have already seen through the composition of the magic treasure, the refining method, as well as the restrictions and formations inscribed on it. This kind of eyesight was not something that anyone could possess. After receiving the jade bottle, the white-robed old man poured the meteorite iron sand into his blue divine flame. After the materials were completely melted, he placed the small bell into the divine flame as well. After all, it was a top-grade immortal artifact, so it still had a certain degree of resistance to the divine flame. The small bell would not be melted in an instant. The liquid meteorite iron sand that had already melted slowly gathered into the gap of the small bell. The white-robed old man's other hand was also rapidly forming seals. Groups of dazzling seals were sent into the divine fire, and the cracks on the small bell's body were also slowly disappearing. Whoosh! The blue divine flame suddenly disappeared, and the small bell was already intact. It trembled in front of the white-robed old man, as if it was cheering for its rebirth. The spectating cultivators below the stage collectively burst into thunderous applause. They were all cheering for the white-robed old man's exquisite skills. From a moment the white-robed old man received the small bottle containing the meteorite iron sand to the moment he finished repairing it, he used no more than 100 breaths of time. Furthermore, he did not stop at all during the entire process, completing it in one go. This was both admirable and exciting. Junior thanks Senior. The owner of the small bell received his magic treasure and bowed repeatedly in excitement. Haha, it's a small matter. There's no need to be so polite. The white-robed old man smiled amiably, then said, "That's all for today. This old man still has other things to do. If I have time, I'll help everyone refine and repair it." Although the audience still wanted to continue, the white-robed old man's figure had already disappeared from the stage. Xiao Yu also did not have enough fun watching, but since the old man had already left, he naturally would not stay behind to reminisce about anything. That old man must have gone to find Qing Xian. It's good that I go back now. With an outsider here, I think she won't dare to be angry. Thinking of this, Xiao Yu began to walk toward the Nanhua Treasure Pavilion. When he reached the first floor of the Nanhua Treasure Pavilion, Xiao Yu asked the manager of the first floor, "Did a white-robed old man go upstairs just now?" Xiao Yu came with Qing Xian and went upstairs together. The manager of the first floor of the Nanhua Treasure Pavilion naturally knew that Xiao Yu's identity was extraordinary, so he answered honestly, "Senior, the Grandmaster has indeed been brought upstairs, but I don't know which floor he is on which floor." "Haha, it's good that he is here." Smiling, Xiao Yu went upstairs directly to the fourth floor. As expected, the white-robed old man was on the fourth floor, and so was Qing Xian. The two of them seemed to be chatting happily. But when he saw Xiao Yu come up, Qing Xian's expression changed, and then he stood up and introduced, "This is Elder Peng, and this is Qing Xian's junior brother, Xiao Yu." Then Qing Xian said to Xiao Yu, "Junior brother Xiao, come and greet Elder Peng." Xiao Yu cupped his fist with a smile and saluted. "Junior brother Xiao Yu greets Elder Peng." When I saw Elder Peng's performance on the street just now, I was really amazed and very much in awe. Elder Peng was a very easygoing person, and he had already stood up. When Qing Xian introduced him, he looked at Xiao Yu with shining eyes. At this time, he cupped his fists and returned the salute, saying, "Junior brother Xiao, you haven't been cultivating for long, but you have already reached such a cultivation level. It is even more admirable." Hearing this, Xiao Yu secretly cursed. He actually met another old monster with sharp eyes, but his expression was still very calm, and he said modestly, "Elder Peng, you flatter me." The three of them sat down again. With Xiao Yu around, Qing Xian was no longer in the mood to chat with Elder Peng, and he said, "It is rare for Elder Peng to go out on a trip, and I just happen to have a damaged magic weapon here. I would be very grateful if Elder Peng could help me repair it." As Qing Xian spoke, he took out a fan with more than a dozen colorful feathers and put it on the table. The feather fan didn't look too damaged, but there was a perfectly straight sword mark in the center. It was obviously slashed by a sharp sword. Elder Peng nodded first. Then he took the feather fan in his hand. After carefully examining it for a while, he said, "This feather fan is a low-grade divine tool. It should have been damaged by a single sword strike, so it should have been attacked by a divine sword. I remember that junior sister Qing Xian seems to have a mid-grade divine sword." Qing Xian said very frankly, "To tell you the truth, this feather fan was damaged by my divine sword. At that time, it was in the hands of my opponent. So it was obtained after killing someone." Xiao Yu interrupted. Qing Xian ignored Xiao Yu and only glared at him. Xiao Yu only then realized that many things could be seen through but not explained. Elder Peng naturally didn't care where the feather fan came from or how it was obtained. After repeatedly examining the feather fan a few times, he said, "This feather fan should have been refined from the feathers of a high-grade divine beast, the vermilion bird. If you want to repair it, you'll need a bottle of the vermilion bird's blood." Qing Xian had also come prepared. He immediately placed a jade bottle full of brownish-red liquid on the table. Elder Peng opened the jade bottle and said after a while, "Yes, it is indeed the vermilion bird's blood. The two of you please step aside." Elder Peng asked Xiao Yu and Qing Xian to step aside before releasing his divine fire and pouring all of the vermilion bird's blood into it to refine it. The vermilion bird's blood was a much higher grade than the meteorite iron sand. Even though he was burning it with divine fire, it still took him almost 10 days to finish refining it. During this time, Elder Peng's expression was calm, and he appeared to be very focused. Xiao Yu and Qing Xian were waiting patiently. Qing Xian seemed to still be angry with Xiao Yu. Perhaps his attention was focused on repairing the feather fan, so he didn't say a single word to Xiao Yu. After refining the vermilion bird's blood, Elder Peng didn't throw the damaged feather fan into his divine fire. Instead, he slowly dripped the refined vermilion bird's blood onto the sword marks on the feather fan, and he continuously inserted seals into the feather fan. When all of the vermilion bird's blood dripped onto the feather fan, Elder Peng immediately extinguished the divine fire. Then, he formed a seal with one hand and quickly inscribed a miniature restriction and formation with the other. He then inserted the seal, restriction, and formation into the feather fan. At this time, beads of sweat had already seeped out of Elder Peng's forehead. His expression was grave, and his face was a little pale. It seemed that he had consumed a lot of energy. After all, it was repairing a divine artifact. It was impossible for ordinary cultivators to complete this task. Even if Elder Peng could complete it, it wouldn't be as easy as repairing a top-grade immortal artifact. However, although Elder Peng's actions seemed simple, it required extremely high levels of array Dao, restriction Dao, and refining skills to support the successful completion of these actions. Moreover, there couldn't be any mistakes in any of the steps. It also required extremely high and precise control. After spending nearly a month, Elder Peng finally stopped. The feather fan, which had been very quiet after being damaged, was now circulating with dazzling divine light. It floated in the air of the fourth floor, looking very mystical. After completing the task, Elder Peng didn't even have time to wipe his sweat. He directly took a milky white pill and then closed his eyes to meditate. Xiaoling Yu could see that Elder Peng's cultivation was at the late immortal emperor realm. He didn't have any divine power in his body, so it seemed so strenuous for him to repair this divine artifact. If Elder Peng was a celestial venerable, with his superb skills, he wouldn't have to spend so much effort to repair a low-grade divine artifact. Seeing how tired Elder Peng was, Xiaoling Yu found it hard to ask him to help repair the invisible divine robe that had been severely damaged. However, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and he couldn't let it go to waste. After the feather fan was repaired, Qing Xian put it away and made it recognize her as its owner. Only then did her expression look better. Her anger towards Xiaoling Yu also disappeared. After all, she didn't have any big conflicts or grudges with Xiaoling Yu. The drinking incident was just a small matter. Elder Peng took a full 3 months to completely recover. Xiaoling Yu and Qing Xian also waited on the 4th floor for 3 months. After all, Elder Peng was a guest and had helped a lot. Qing Xian naturally had to do her best to watch and protect him while he was recuperating. After Elder Peng woke up, Qing Xian offered a storage bag and said, "Elder Peng worked so hard. Qing Xian can't thank you enough. It's just a small gift. Take it as a token of my sincerity." Xiaoling Yu estimated that there must be a lot of immortal crystals in the storage bag. He originally thought that a special existence like Elder Peng would definitely not care about immortal crystals and other worldly possessions. However, he didn't expect Elder Peng to put the storage bag away after smiling. It seems that this old guy didn't help for nothing. Since that was the case, Xiaoling Yu felt a little more at ease. "When I was free, I brewed a few jars of good wine. I heard that Elder Peng likes this kind of wine, so I'll give you a few jars. I hope that Elder Peng won't laugh at my poor cooking skills after you drink it." As Qing Xian spoke, she took out a few jars of the wine that she had drunk with Xiaoling Yu before. It's rare for Qing Xian to have such good intentions. This old man can satisfy his appetite again. Elder Peng didn't refuse. He grinned as he put away the wine jars into his storage magic treasure, and then he said, "This matter is over. I've been out traveling for quite some time, so it's time for me to return and take a look." With that said, Elder Peng stood up to leave. Qing Xian gave Xiaoling Yu a meaningful look and said, "Elder Peng is going back? Why don't you stay in Nanhua City for a few more days so that I can play host to you?" When Xiaoling Yu saw Qing Xian's meaningful glance, he knew that Qing Xian's anger had subsided. He felt even more relieved and said, "Elder Peng, I also have a damaged magic treasure that I want to ask you to help me repair. Would you be willing to trouble yourself again?" Elder Peng asked, "Is it also a divine tool?" Xiaoling Yu nodded. Chapter 400. Today was the last day of the month. Xiao Fei had just updated a chapter, and there were still 2 more chapters to go. Xiao Fei had been updating for the past few days. Even if she had a slight cold and headache, Xiao Fei still persevered. Yesterday, she gritted her teeth and wrote until late into the night. It was likely that it would be the same today. With Xiao Fei working so hard, if the masters had gold medals in their hands, how could they not give them to her? Next month, although Xiao Fei did not dare to guarantee that she would be able to write 3 chapters every day, she would at least be able to maintain 3 chapters a day for the next 30 days. The reason for this was to let the masters see Xiao Fei's hard work and support Xiao Fei and the 9 Revolutions Chaos Formula more. With more than 400 gold medals this month, it showed that the masters were still very supportive, especially those old hardcore fans who had followed Xiao Fei's path of writing for 2 to 3 years. Every time the masters sent gold medals, Xiao Fei would be able to see their figures. Xiao Fei would like to thank all of you here. Xiao Fei had walked all the way to this day and could be considered to have a foothold in the online literature world. She had a place and could take care of herself. These were all bestowed upon her by the masters, and they were also the result of Xiao Fei's hard work. Many of the masters knew that Xiao Fei had fought her way out of thousands of enemies and knew that it was not easy for her. Hence, they had been silently supporting her. When Xiao Fei needed help, they would step forward to fight alongside Xiao Fei and often give their encouragement. Even if Xiao Fei did not request it, the masters would still silently support her. Regarding this, Xiao Fei bowed to all of you. On the last day of the month, please support as many gold medals as you can. Just don't let the 9 Revolutions Chaos Formula look too bad on the gold medal leaderboard. Next month, I hope that all of you can step forward bravely and bring out your invincible aura of total annihilation. Roar, roar. Chapter 4:01. Xiao Lingyu didn't care how much the gift would cost. He was only concerned about whether Elder Peng would agree or not. Of course, he was grateful that Qing Xian spoke up for him. Elder Peng hesitated for a moment before nodding. Okay. Xiao Lingyu quickly took out the invisible divine robe that he obtained after killing Nieyu and said, "Thank you, Elder Brother Peng." Elder Peng sat down again and held the invisible divine robe in his hand. After studying it for a long time, he said, "To repair this invisible divine robe, you need a piece of dark shadow cloudstone and a piece of space element demonic beast leather that is at least in the early stage of the immortal emperor realm." Xiao Lingyu was stunned when he heard this because he didn't have any of these 2 materials. "Didn't you prepare the materials?" Qing Xian asked with a frown when she saw Xiao Lingyu's awkward expression. "I don't know what materials are needed. How can I prepare them?" Xiao Lingyu replied gloomily, "Elder Peng, can you wait for a while and let junior brother Xiao prepare?" Qing Xian also asked with some difficulty. Old Peng's reputation in the immortal world was extremely high. Even ordinary immortal venerables would be courteous to him. Moreover, most immortal venerables would owe him a favor. It wasn't easy for Qing Xian to invite such a figure over. Moreover, she had to borrow the face of the Nanhua immortal sect, a major sect in the immortal world. It was even more commendable that old Peng agreed to help twice. Elder Peng was indeed a little unhappy at first, but after thinking for a while, he smiled and said, "It's okay. Sister Qing Xian can go and prepare the materials. With the wealth and manpower of the Nanhua immortal sect, it will take at most half a year to complete the task. I can drink with junior brother Xiao here while waiting." Qing Xian was puzzled by Elder Peng's words, but she didn't delay. She immediately went downstairs and began to arrange for people to gather the materials. Qing Xian was puzzled. It was clearly junior brother Xiao who wanted to repair the magic weapon. Why did Elder Peng ask her to gather the materials instead of letting junior brother Xiao do it himself? Could it be that Elder Peng purposely sent him away so that he could have something to say to junior brother Xiao? Of course, Qing Xian didn't have to run around collecting materials by herself, but she didn't go back to the 4th floor of the Nanhua Treasure Pavilion. Xiao Lingyu also felt that it was a little strange, but since he didn't have to go out to collect materials and could even sit in his room and drink, he naturally didn't have much of an opinion. After Qing Xian left, Elder Peng invited Xiao Lingyu to sit across from him. Then, he took out 2 bottles of wine that Qing Xian had given him in 2 large porcelain bowls. It was the same place and the same drinks, but the person drinking was different. Xiao Yu's attitude and way of drinking were naturally different. After filling the 2 bowls, Elder Peng asked, "Since there are no outsiders here, I have something I don't understand. Brother Xiao, can you tell me the truth?" Xiao Yu knew that this old guy had something to say to him, but since he had a favor to ask, he could only nod and reply, "Brother Peng, just ask. I'll tell you everything I know." Elder Peng nodded in satisfaction and asked, "Brother, do you also have the divine fire?" Xiao Yu didn't hesitate and replied, "Yes." As he spoke, Xiao Yu spread out his palm, and a flaming orange of primordial true fire appeared in his palm. Elder Peng's eyes shone brightly. He squinted for a moment and said with certainty, "This isn't the divine fire." Xiao Yu's heart skipped a beat. All the experts who had seen the primordial true fire would mistake it for the divine fire. Could this old guy see some clues? But its power is comparable to the divine fire. Elder Peng added. He also spread out his palm, and a blue flaming orange appeared in his palm. The 2 flaming oranges weren't far from each other, and they seemed to be able to sense each other. They both jumped unsteadily, as if they were planning to compete. The 2 of them put away their flames at the same time. Elder Peng continued, "Brother Zhao's flame has a primitive aura. It should be a kind of origin flame, and there's a lot of room for growth. However, there's an evil aura in this flame, as if it's been infected by demonic power. It's just like the aura that Brother Zhao's body exudes. There should be some secret to this, right?" Xiao Yu thought for a moment and said, "When I was free, I studied some demonic cultivation methods. It might be because of this." Elder Peng smiled and said, "I didn't expect Brother Xiao to have the interest to study demonic cultivation methods." Xiao Yu could tell that Elder Peng didn't believe his answer, but he couldn't explain it in detail. He only said vaguely, "Before I ascended, I had a lot of dealings with demonic cultivators. I felt that demonic cultivation methods had many merits, so I studied them." Elder Peng first clinked his wine bowl with Xiao Yu's. After drinking a bowl of wine, he said, "Brother Xiao, you must have just joined the Nanhua immortal sect not long ago, right?" Xiao Yu nodded. Elder Peng smiled and suddenly said meaningfully, "It seems that an independent space has just appeared in the spatial barrier between the immortal realm and the demon realm." Xiao Yu couldn't help but frown when he heard this. He thought that this old man must have noticed something. Elder Peng said again, "Brother Xiao, I don't have any other intentions, and I don't intend to get to the bottom of things. So, I hope Brother Xiao can tell me some things frankly. This old man can swear to the heavens that I absolutely have no intention of exposing Brother Zhao's background or harming Brother Xiao." Xiao Yu said calmly, "What does Elder Peng want to know?" Old Peng said, "I can see that little brother is able to control this flame at will. So I'm sure that little brother didn't obtain this flame from elsewhere, but cultivated it yourself. I want to know how little brother managed to cultivate this flame. Brother Zhao's energy is special and can be concealed a lot, but Brother Xiao can see that it's not as simple as studying demonic cultivation methods. You were originally a demonic cultivator. If I'm not wrong, Brother Xiao must have just snuck into the immortal realm from the demon realm. So I want to know some things about the demon realm from Brother Xiao." Brother Zhao's eyes are as sharp as torches, so accurate. Xiao Yu smiled bitterly as he praised, and then he said, "How I cultivated this flame is related to my cultivation technique, and it's one of my greatest secrets. I'm unable to tell Brother Xiao about it in detail, so I hope Brother Xiao can understand. As for the situation in the demon realm, I really do know a little about it. I'll do my best to answer Brother Zhao's questions." Elder Peng sighed as well and said, "I've been constantly traveling throughout the immortal realm for many years because I wanted to use my divine flame to sense the existence of the flame. Unfortunately, I've been unable to obtain the fortune. I originally thought that there would be hope when I saw Brother Xiao today, so I asked. Since it's inconvenient for Brother Xiao to tell me, then I won't force you. As for the demon realm, I only want to know 2 things. The first is that there was an invincible devil exalt that roamed freely through the 3 dimensions in the past, and he was sealed by the exalt rank experts of the 3 dimensions all those years ago. How is he now? The second is, does the demon realm have a great grandmaster in refining tools or alchemy?" Xiao Yu thought carefully for a moment and replied, Brother Zhao's first question, I actually know a little about it. That devil Exalt has already broken out of the seal and is currently recovering his strength. He should be able to recover his strength in 1,000,000 years. As for Brother Zhao's second question, I really don't know. In any case, when I was in the demon realm, I've never seen or heard of a great grandmaster in refining tools or alchemy. In the immortal realm, devil realm, and demon realm, to be called a great grandmaster, one must have the ability to refine divine items. For example, Elder Peng had refined divine items. Although it was only a low-grade divine item, he could still be called a great grandmaster in refining tools. Can he recover in 1,000,000 years? Elder Peng slightly frowned and seemed to be worried as he said, Within 1,000,000 years, a passage-like spatial crack will appear in the space barrier between the immortal realm and the demon realm. If he really recovers his strength, then I'm afraid a great calamity will appear in both the immortal realm and the demon realm. Elder Peng, do you have enmity with him? Xiao Yu asked curiously. Haha, I have no enmity with him. Back then, I was just a nobody. If I had enmity with him, wouldn't I have died long ago? Elder Peng shook his head and replied. And then he said, Even though there's no enmity between us, he seized a treasure from my master when he arrived at the immortal dimension all those years ago. And it was precisely because of that treasure that my master perished from the divine tribulation. However, his old family instructed me that I must seize that treasure back. Xiao Yu didn't know how to respond, and could only drink. However, Elder Peng continued to explain, it's precisely because of this that I really want to obtain an origin flame and merge my divine flame into it to increase its might. Only in this way would I have a chance to defeat that demon sovereign and fulfill Master's last wish. Moreover, I only have 1,000,000 years left. Xiao Yu said, there are very few origin flames to begin with. Moreover, they're hidden very deeply. Even if you find one, it's very difficult to restrain it. Moreover, even if Elder Brother manages to capture an origin flame and successfully merge your divine flame into it, it'll still be very difficult for Elder Brother to control it will, right? Elder Peng shook his head and said, so long as you can find an origin flame, the other problems aren't a problem. For refinement experts like us who have reached the Grandmaster level, which one of us isn't an expert in controlling fire? Xiao Yu drank another bowl of wine and said, Actually, I have some enmity with that demon sovereign. It's even to the extent that in 1,000,000 years, either he or I will die. Oh, why is that? Tell me about it. Elder Peng seemed to be very curious as well. When he broke out of the seal, he split his life essence into many portions. One of them invaded my body. I have to cultivate to the Exalt realm before he recovers his strength and erase his life imprint. Otherwise, I have to kill him when the time comes. Otherwise, everything I obtained from cultivation will be taken away by him. Xiao Yu explained truthfully. It was exactly because he felt that Elder Peng wasn't lying and felt that there was no need for Elder Peng to lie to him, that Xiao Yu spoke truthfully. Chapter 402. Xiao Yu only needed to completely release the primal chaos energy to protect his body, and Elder Peng's consciousness will be able to penetrate his body. With Elder Peng's eyesight, he would naturally be able to see the demon venerable's life imprint. Since Elder Peng had already seen through some of his secrets, Xiao Yu did not mind letting Elder Peng see more. With Elder Peng's status and identity, it was naturally impossible for him to run around and gossip. From the looks of it, only one can survive between Brother Xiao and the demon venerable. I wonder how confident Xiao Yu is that you will have the ability to defeat him within 1,000,000 years? Elder Peng nodded and asked after looking at it. I'm not very confident, but I will definitely do my best. After all, no one wants to die, Xiao Yu said with uncertainty. If I give my divine fire to Brother Xiao and help you fuse it with your origin flame, do you think you'll have a better chance? Elder Peng continued to ask. Xiao Yu could not help but be stunned when he heard this. He never thought that Elder Peng would make such a suggestion. However, after he came back to his senses, he replied, if Elder Peng is willing to part with it, It will naturally increase my strength by a lot. Elder Peng said, "It's not that I'm unwilling to part with it. But before that, Brother Xiao must swear on your soul that if you really defeat the demon venerable in the future, you must help me take back the treasures passed down by my sect, and help my master fulfill his dying wish." Xiao Yu did not hesitate and said, "Elder Peng is using your divine fire to help me. How can I covet the treasures of Master Peng's sect?" Elder Peng hesitated for a while and asked, "When I observed Brother Zhao's body with my immortal sense, I found that Xiao Yu did not seem to have cultivated for too long. Is that accurate?" Xiao Yu nodded and said, "It is. I don't remember exactly how many years I have cultivated, but it should be less than 30,000 years." Elder Peng was very surprised at first. Then he laughed and said, "Junior Brother Xiao is really an unprecedented genius. You can cultivate to your current realm in just a few tens of thousands of years. I reckon that those self-proclaimed geniuses in the immortal world would be so ashamed that they would not dare to walk with their heads raised. Junior Brother Xiao, your current strength should be comparable to an early-stage immortal emperor, right?" Xiao Yu replied confidently, "If I wasn't ambushed, or if I didn't deliberately seek death, no one below the immortal venerable level should be able to kill me." The look of satisfaction on Elder Peng's face deepened. He finally said, "Good. I'll take a gamble on Brother Xiao. After I repair your divine robe, I will pass the divine fire to you. Brother Xiao wouldn't mind making an oath first, right?" Xiao Yu was also very straightforward and immediately swore on her soul. Old Peng pondered for a moment after Xiao Yu finished swearing the oath. Finally, he said, "Since we have nothing to do now, I can teach you the fire-controlling technique that I have mastered. You should try to comprehend it first, in case anything goes wrong when you merge the divine flames." Xiao Yu naturally wouldn't refuse. "That's great." Elder Peng immediately handed a jade slip to Xiao Yu, and Xiao Yu sank his consciousness into it. Although it was only a fire-controlling technique, it was extensive and profound. Not only were there countless hand seals and incantations, but there were also detailed introductions of various flame-controlling techniques. Xiao Yu could be considered to have played with many flames, so he quickly immersed himself in it. Time flew by like this. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. Xiao Yu woke up because Qing Xian had once again reached the 4th floor. "Junior brother is really diligent. It's only been half a year, but you still didn't forget to meditate and cultivate." Qing Xian first greeted Elder Peng, then said to Xiao Yu with a hint of jealousy, "Senior sister, you went out to busy yourself. How can I have the nerve to sit here idly?" Xiao Yu was in a good mood after chatting with Elder Peng for a while, so he replied with a smile, "Sister Qing Xian, you should have prepared the materials, right?" Elder Peng interrupted and asked. "Yes." Qing Xian nodded in response, then took out 2 jade boxes and placed them on the table. She said, "Elder Peng, take a look and see if these 2 materials are of sufficient quality." Elder Peng first opened one of the jade boxes and took out a palm-sized piece of stone that looked like a cotton ball. The strange thing was that the stone looked very light, like a big ball of fluff, but it also gave people a feeling that it was faintly discernible. Elder Peng said with satisfaction, "This piece of shadow cloud stone is of excellent quality. There's no problem." Then he opened the other jade box and took out a piece of material that looked like a silver sheepskin scroll. As soon as this material was taken out of the jade box, it caused the surrounding space to fluctuate incessantly, and it seemed even more miraculous. Elder Peng said with a smile, "The Nanhua Immortal Sect is indeed a great clan in the immortal world. In such a short period of time, you've collected the leather of an emperor-level spatial demonic beast. No wonder those immortal world experts are all willing to put aside their cultivation to establish a force." After hearing Elder Peng's comment, Qing Xian and Xiao Yu's expressions suddenly relaxed, and they couldn't help but look at each other. When their eyes met, the two immediately turned their heads away. Xiao Yu saw the unconcealable joy in Qing Xian's almond-shaped eyes. From this, it could be seen that Qing Xian was sincerely helping her. Qing Xian, on the other hand, saw the obvious gratitude in Xiao Lingyu's starry eyes, which made her feel a little happy. Since her tightly locked heart had been knocked open and the defenses in the depths of her heart had been ruthlessly broken, Qing Xian could no longer seal her heart. Her heart had already broken the dam, and her feelings were bound to be like a flood that broke through the dam, unstoppable. I'll have to trouble the two of you to step aside. This old man is going to start working. This may be the last time I help someone repair a divine artifact. Elder Peng waved Xiao Lingyu and Qing Xian away, and then a blue divine flame appeared in his palm. However, this time, he didn't immediately throw the material into the flame to refine it. Instead, he stared at his divine flame with a complicated expression on his face. "What's wrong, Elder Peng?" Qing Xian asked in confusion when she saw Elder Peng staring at the divine flame for nearly 10 minutes without actually starting to work. "You'll know in the future," Xiao Lingyu said vaguely. "Oomph. If you don't know, then you don't know. Don't pretend to know." Qing Xian replied snappily. Perhaps his thoughts were disturbed by Xiao Lingyu and Qing Xian's words, but this time, Elder Peng suddenly came back to his senses. After shaking his head, his expression returned to normal, and then he threw the dark shadow meteorite into the blue divine flame. The repair process was still very complicated, but Elder Peng's movements were very smooth. Of course, one could tell from Elder Peng's increasingly pale face that he was very tired and had consumed a lot of energy. After a full 2 months, Elder Peng finally stopped. A brand new invisible divine robe appeared in the air of the 4th floor. After Elder Peng put away the divine flame, he once again fed himself a milky white pill and then quietly meditated to recover. Seeing Elder Peng like this, Xiao Lingyu was very grateful and secretly vowed to help him complete his tasks in the future. Xiao Lingyu quietly walked to the front of the invisible divine robe and pulled it down. Then, she dripped a drop of blood essence wrapped in her soul into it. After making it recognize her as its master, she put it away. Although the repair was complete, Xiao Lingyu still needed to refine it before she could use this invisible divine robe as she wished. "This divine robe of yours was also obtained after killing someone, right?" Qing Xian asked in a strange tone. Xiao Lingyu knew that Qing Xian asked this because Elder Peng had said the same thing when he helped Qing Xian repair the feather fan divine artifact. He also knew that most women were narrow-minded, and when he thought about how Qing Xian had worked hard to repair this invisible divine robe for more than half a year, he didn't bicker with her. Instead, he politely said, "Thank you for your help this time, senior sister. If you need me in the future, I definitely won't refuse." "Really?" Qing Xian asked. Really?" Xiao Lingyu paused and nodded. "Then give me another 1,000 armored puppets." Qing Xian didn't beat around the bush and said very directly, "This." Xiao Lingyu seemed to be in a difficult position. "Stingy." Qing Xian glared and scolded in a low voice. "What's stingy? I just feel that 1,000 puppets is too little and not enough to express my gratitude to senior sister. So I've decided to give senior sister 2,000 armored puppets." Xiao Lingyu then argued. When Qing Xian heard this, she really thought that she had misheard. Her almond eyes lit up as she asked, "Really?" Xiao Lingyu nodded firmly and said, "Really?" The reason for this was that Xiao Lingyu was about to obtain Elder Peng's divine fire, and his strength would definitely improve greatly. Even though the armored puppets were still very useful to him, he didn't need so many of them. Moreover, the armored puppets were far more useful to Qing Xian than to Xiao Lingyu. In fact, the most important thing was that Qing Xian gave Xiao Lingyu a sense of reliability. Moreover, Xiao Lingyu also felt that Qing Xian didn't have any bad intentions towards him and had done her best to help him. Naturally, he couldn't be too stingy and had to think for her. "Did you already have this idea long ago? Were you just deliberately trying to piss me off?" Qing Xian was happy for a moment, but then she pretended to be cold and asked, Yes." After pausing for a moment, Xiao Lingyu lied and admitted it. He didn't dare to say that he actually didn't have this idea before, and there was no need for him to say that. What Xiao Lingyu didn't expect was that his answer caused some subtle changes in Qing Xian's heart. He also didn't see that after Qing Xian pretended to snort coldly with displeasure, some gentleness appeared on her pretty face. This time, Elder Peng took 4 months to completely recover. After getting up, he said to Xiaoling Yu, "If Brother Xiao is free, we can set off now." "Set off? Where are you going?" Qing Xian asked in confusion. Xiaoling Yu also looked a little confused. "If we want to transfer and successfully fuse with the divine fire, we can't do it here. Brother Xiao needs to go somewhere with me," Elder Peng explained briefly. Xiaoling Yu nodded in understanding. However, Qing Xian said in surprise, "Transfer the divine fire? What's going on?" "I'll explain this to senior apprentice sister later," Xiaoling Yu replied. "No, I want to go too. In any case, I have nothing to do when I return to the sect now," Qing Xian said stubbornly. "It's best if Sister Qing Xian can come along. We really do need an expert like Qing Xian to help us." Chapter 4:03. For experts like Xiaoling Yu and Qing Xian to leave the sect temporarily, they would have to inform the sect first, and then the sect master, Qing Pingzi, would make the decision. When Qing Pingzi heard that Xiaoling Yu and Qing Xian were going to leave together for a period of time, he naturally agreed to it. He even thought to himself, "These two are progressing at a fast pace." Whether it was Xiaoling Yu, Qing Xian, or a great grandmaster like Elder Peng, they did not need to wait in line to use the teleportation array. It was not just the devil world and the immortal world. Experts had special privileges everywhere in the cultivation world, even in the secular world. Even though they didn't need to line up, and even though they had to continuously teleport, it still took them 200 years to reach the place that Elder Peng had pointed to. This continent is called the Fire Source Continent. It's the territory of the Fire Sect. After walking out of the teleportation array, Elder Peng explained as he walked out of the teleportation array plaza. "There's a fire pool on the Fire Source Continent, and there's a sacrificial altar in the middle of the fire pool. That sacrificial altar is our target location. The sacrificial altar should be controlled by the Fire Sect, right?" Qing Xian asked. "Of course. Almost everything on the Fire Source Continent is controlled by the Fire Sect." Elder Peng nodded. "I heard that Elder Peng has some history with the Fire Sect. Will the Fire Sect lend us the sacrificial altar this time?" Qing Xian asked worriedly. On the way here, Qing Xian already knew that Elder Peng was going to give his divine fire to Xiaoling Yu. "There is some history. My divine fire was actually obtained on the Fire Source Continent, and it was snatched right under the noses of the Fire Sect's experts," Elder Peng continued. "In the beginning, they kept sending people to kill me in the immortal world, but after I refined the divine fire and became a great grandmaster, they stopped doing anything to me. Now that I'm here to discuss it with them, maybe they'll give me some face." "What if they don't give you face?" Qing Xian continued to ask. Little sister Qing Xian should know that the celestial sovereigns of the celestial world owe me favors. If I have any requests, they will definitely be happy to help." Elder Peng smiled confidently. Indeed, for a martial grandmaster like Elder Peng, any great power would do everything in their power to curry favor with him. Very few would not give him face. No cultivator or power would casually provoke a martial grandmaster, because many experts in the immortal plane owed a favor to a martial grandmaster. At any rate, even experts needed magic treasures. Sometimes, magic treasures would be damaged during battles. Elder Peng was very familiar with the Fire Source Continent, and he arrived at the headquarters of the Fire Sect with great familiarity. Then, he presented his name card and requested to meet with the Fire Sect Master. The current Sect Master of the Fire Sect was called Xiaozi. He was tall and sturdy, with crimson hair and a crimson beard, thick lips, thick brows, and large eyes. He gave off a rough and unrestrained feeling. Xiaozi was a peak late-stage immortal emperor and could be considered one of the few experts in the immortal world. Only the late-stage immortal emperors of the Sword Sect could defeat him. Xiaozi's thick brows knit together when he received Elder Peng's name card, and he said, "This old fellow still has the face to come to the Fire Source Continent." Xiaozi's junior brother, Yihaozi, said, "He's a martial grandmaster now. His status is very different from when he came to steal the divine flame. We can't be too careless. Yishao Zi's other junior brothers nodded in agreement and reminded their sect master not to be impulsive. So what if he's a martial grandmaster? Yishao Zi slapped his own thigh, and then he stood up and said, "Everyone, come with me to meet this old geezer who was once a thief and is now a grandmaster." Yishao Zi led his 6 junior brothers out of the fire sect's headquarters. When he saw Elder Peng and the others, he said, "What's wrong? Have you come to return the divine flame, Martial Grandmaster?" Shaoling Yu and Qing Xian frowned when they heard Yishao Zi's unpleasant tone. They knew that things wouldn't go smoothly. "Greetings, fellow Taoists of the fire sect." Elder Peng bowed slightly and cupped his fists. Shaoling Yu and Qing Xian naturally bowed as well. Apart from Yishao Zi, all the other experts of the fire sect returned the greeting with a smile. Yishao Zi waved his sleeve and asked impatiently, "Old fellow, you don't have to be so polite. You stole our divine flame last time. What are you going to steal this time?" The other experts of the fire sect shook their heads when they heard Yishao Zi. They secretly thought that their sect master was good in every way except for his temper and bluntness. Elder Peng naturally knew Yishao Zi's temperament, so he didn't change his expression and said with a smile, "I'm here to apologize for stealing the divine flame and to borrow your sect's sacrificial flame altar." Yishao snorted coldly and said, "You took the divine flame with your own ability. There's no need for you to apologize. Your apology will only make things difficult for us. As for borrowing the sacrificial flame altar, I can tell you clearly that it's impossible. If you have the ability, you can seize the sacrificial flame altar like last time." Brother Yishao, there's no need to be so harsh. If you have any conditions, you can mention them." Elder Peng still had a pleasant expression. Elder Peng knew that Yishao wasn't an evil person, nor was he a scheming person. He only resented Elder Peng because Elder Peng had stolen the divine flame. If this happened to someone else, they would also resent Elder Peng. There's nothing to talk about. We respect you as a martial grandmaster with many immortal venerables backing you. We won't pursue the matter of you stealing the divine flame. However, it's better if you don't come to the Fire Source continent in the future. Although our fire sect doesn't have a martial grandmaster, we don't need to ask anyone for help in refining tools. Yishao bluntly refused. "I can refine a fire divine tool for your fire sect," Elder Peng said calmly. The experts of the fire sect were a little tempted. After all, it was a fire divine tool. Naturally, all the experts of the fire sect wanted it, but they didn't dare to speak up. "Unless you can refine 8 or 10 fire divine tools for us, perhaps I will consider it," Yishao said indifferently. What do you think a divine tool is? That you can refine 8 or 10 of them as you wish." Elder Peng's patience seemed to have been worn out. Ever since he became a weapon refining grandmaster, this was the first time he spoke to someone in such a manner. After his expression turned cold, he said, "I originally didn't want to use my position to bully you, but if Brother Yishao doesn't give me any face, this old man will have to shamelessly ask 2 immortal venerables for help." Apart from Yishao, the expressions of the experts of the fire sect changed drastically. They knew very well that Elder Peng wasn't boasting. Elder Peng indeed had the ability to ask immortal venerables. Even though the fire sect was a first-rate aristocratic family in the immortal world, and its overall strength was much stronger than the Nanhua immortal sect, it still didn't have the ability to ignore immortal venerables. After all, the experts of the fire sect were in the immortal realm, and immortal venerables were already god-level existences. If you have the ability, then ask immortal venerables to destroy my fire sect," Yishao said fearlessly. Although immortal venerables were strong, there was a rule in the immortal world that immortal venerables couldn't casually interfere in the grievances of others, let alone kill cultivators of the immortal world. If the fire sect resisted wholeheartedly, even if immortal venerables came, it would probably be very difficult. After all, the fire sect was a first-rate sect in the immortal world with many experts and great influence. Immortal venerables definitely wouldn't kill the entire sect. Elder Peng was so angry that his body trembled. He realized that immortal venerables might not be of any help, so he didn't ask immortal venerables for help when he came. But now that he was stuck here, he had to do something. Elder Peng, wait a moment. Let me talk. Seeing that Elder Peng was about to turn and leave as if he was really going to ask immortal venerables, Xiao Lingyu stopped him. After calming Elder Peng down, Xiao Lingyu took a step forward and said to Yi Xiao, I've heard that the fire sect is righteous, and that you repay kindness with kindness and resentment with resentment. I wonder if it's true? Of course, Yi Xiao replied proudly. Then the fire sect owes me a big favor. I wonder if you can return it now? Xiao Lingyu said with a faint smile. Who are you? When did my fire sect owe you a favor? Yi Xiao asked with a puzzled expression. There should be a disciple called Luo Zhe in the fire sect. Sect master, you'll know once you ask him, Xiao Lingyu said confidently. Oh, then please wait a moment. I'll send someone to ask him now. Yi Xiao replied to Xiao Lingyu, and then he turned around and said to his junior brothers behind him, Whose disciple is Luo Zhe? Everyone pondered for a moment before Yi Xiao Lingyu suddenly reminded. Sect master, isn't Luo Zhe your favorite grand disciple? Yi Xiao was stunned when he heard this, and then he slapped himself on the forehead and said, Right, Luo Zhe is my grand disciple. It's all that old geezer's fault for making me so angry that I even forgot about this. Xiao Lingyu's group of 3 and the members of the fire sect were speechless, and they said in their hearts, Yi Xiao is really too careless. It wasn't long before Luo Zhe was asked to come out, and he said with surprise when he saw Xiao Lingyu, Brother Xiao, why did you slap? Before Luo Zhe could finish speaking, Yi Xiao slapped the back of Luo Zhe's head and cursed furiously. Little bastard, his cultivation is countless levels higher than yours, yet you actually dare to call him brother? You're too unruly. Luo Zhe staggered from the slap, and he had a depressed expression on his face. He silently retreated to the back and didn't dare speak another word. Little bastard, this fellow Taoist said that our fire sect owes him a favor, and he even said that you know about it. Tell us the whole story, said Yi Xiao. Our fire sect really does owe Brother Xiao. Oh no, Senior Xiao a favor. Luo Zhe hurriedly changed the way he addressed Xiao Lingyu when he heard his martial ancestor address Xiao Lingyu as fellow Taoist, and then he told Yi Xiao about how Xiao Lingyu had helped the disciples of the fire sect in that independent space. Luo Zhe had agreed to that favor on behalf of the fire sect. Even though it could be considered as a courtesy, Xiao Lingyu had indeed helped the disciples of the fire sect. Moreover, Luo Zhe had admitted it now. So, Yi Xiao, who cared a lot about his reputation and was a very loyal person, naturally had to admit that the fire sect owed Xiao Lingyu a favor in front of so many people. Fellow Taoist, Yi Xiao Lingyu thanks you on behalf of the fire sect for lending a hand in that independent space. Chapter 404. Like Elder Peng, I would like to borrow the sacrificial flame altar of the fire sect. I hope Sect Master can make an exception for me, Xiao Lingyu replied. Although Yi Xiao's face didn't look good, he could ignore a martial grandmaster like Elder Peng and even ignore the threat of an immortal venerable, but he couldn't ignore the favor his sect owed. No matter how big the world was, a favor was the most important. At this time, Yi Xiao's junior brothers were very depressed. They complained in their hearts that Yi Xiaozi shouldn't have refused Elder Peng's condition. He had just agreed to Elder Peng's condition and could get a fire divine weapon. Now, he still had to lend them the sacrificial flame altar, but it was only returning a favor. Yi Xiaozi's temperament determined that he couldn't refuse Xiao Lingyu's request. Even though he was very unwilling, he could only nod his head heavily. Seeing this situation, Qing Xian was even more curious about Xiao Lingyu and felt a little proud of him. Even a martial grandmaster with the threat of an immortal venerable couldn't settle the matter, but his junior brother Xiao had settled it with just a few words. Qing Xian didn't know why he felt very happy in his heart. The fire pool wasn't in the fire sect's encampment, but it wasn't very far from the fire sect's encampment. It only took them half an hour to reach the fire pool. The fire pool was actually a huge valley. The whole valley was filled with rolling flames, and the surrounding mountains were burned red. The mountain rocks around the fire pool had been refined by the raging flames for many years and were of high quality, but no one dared to collect them. There was no entrance to this huge valley. If one wanted to enter it, they had to climb over the mountains. However, it wasn't difficult for the experts of the fire sect and Shaolin Yu's group to do so. In addition to the rolling flames in the fire pool, there were also many fire spirits that were born naturally. These fire spirits were very important to the fire sect. If a fire spirit was sealed in a high-level fire magic treasure, the quality and power of the magic treasure would increase a lot. Moreover, the magic treasure would have more spirituality. Some of the fire element sect's powerful cultivation methods also required the support of fire spirits. However, the fire pool had always been under the watch of the fire sect's experts, so it was difficult for it to nurture a powerful fire spirit. After all, there were too many disciples in the fire sect, and the fire sect's cultivators had too many fire-type magic treasures. If it weren't for the fire sect's intentional restraint and control, it was likely that as soon as a fire spirit was born in the fire pool, it would be immediately taken away by the fire sect's disciples. The closer they got to the center of the fire pool, the hotter the flames became. However, it didn't affect them at all. Although Shaolin Yu's cultivation was low, the quality of his body was high. Furthermore, he possessed the primal chaos primordial fire, which was comparable to the godly fire. There was no godly fire in this fire pool, so how could it hurt him? As for Elder Peng, even if he didn't have the divine fire, his late-stage immortal Emperor Realm cultivation base was enough to withstand the flames. Naturally, Qing Xian was the same. The experts from the fire sect were all experts at playing with fire. They often went in and out of the fire pool, so they were not afraid of the flames in the fire pool. In fact, they felt like they were fish in water or dragons in the sea. In the center of the fire pool, there was a high platform. The high platform was in the shape of a square with distinct edges and corners. It was about 3,000 meters tall and 300 meters wide. Its entire body was engraved with dense runes and patterns. In the midst of the raging flames, it seemed very quiet and special. This high platform was the sacrificial flame altar. Under Yi Xiao Zi's lead, everyone flew to the top of the sacrificial flame altar. The top of the sacrificial flame altar was very flat. It was engraved with a hexagonal starlight pattern. In the center of the pattern, which was also the center of the sacrificial flame altar, was a hexagonal groove. It seemed like something needed to be filled. Since the three of you have decided to borrow the sacrificial flame altar, I'm naturally prepared. I'll now activate the sacrificial flame altar. The rest will be up to you. As Yi Xiao spoke, he took out a hexagonal crystal and filled it into the groove in the center of the altar. Then, Yi Xiao cast a seal at the crystal and chanted a few awkward incantations. After the sacrificial flame altar trembled slightly, Yi Xiao called out to his junior brothers and left together. Only Shaolin Yu and the other two were left on the altar. Sister Qing Xian, in a while, the sacrificial flame altar will release a very strong aura. The surrounding flames will also madly rush over here. The two of us have no time to divert our attention, so we'll have to trouble you to protect us and block the aura released by the sacrificial flame altar and the surrounding flames. Elder Peng solemnly instructed. Don't worry, Qing Xian will do her best. Qing Xian nodded in response. Brother Xiao, in a while, the altar will release an invisible energy mass. The two of us will do our best to inject our flames into it. Our movements must be fast, and there can't be any stagnation or negligence. Elder Peng reminded Shaolin Yu. Shaolin Yu nodded silently, and her expression seemed to be nervous. After waiting for less than an hour, the sacrificial flame altar trembled even more violently. The hexagonal crystal under the three of them began to release a very powerful aura, as if it wanted to push the three of them away from the altar. The flames in the fire pool seemed to have been greatly stimulated. They rolled and roared as they rushed over. The momentum was very terrifying. Qing Xian forced herself to calm down. With a shout, Her entire body released a cold and domineering aura. Not only did it stabilize the aura released by the sacrificial flame altar, but it also blocked the flames that were constantly rushing over. Before the sacrificial flame altar ends, Sister Xian must hold on. Otherwise, the three of us will be in danger. Elder Peng couldn't help but remind her. Elder Peng, don't worry. I won't joke about your lives. Xian said firmly. At this moment, the altar trembled even more violently. Not only did the aura release become stronger, but it also caused the flames in the fire pool to become more violent. An invisible energy mass slowly appeared above the three of them. Brother Xiao, it's starting. Elder Peng shouted. A wave of blue fire surged from his palm toward the invisible energy mass. Xiao Lingyu didn't hesitate. He immediately released his own primal chaos, true fire above his head. As the primal chaos, true fire, and the blue divine fire collided, the invisible energy mass, the entire sacrificial flame altar, and even the entire fire pool began to tremble. Although the mighty momentum was covered by the surging flames, Xian gradually began to feel strained. Sparkling and translucent beads of sweat had already seeped out of Xuan's forehead that was as smooth as jade, as well as her nose. Moreover, her teeth were tightly biting her red lips, and blood was already seeping out from the corners of her mouth. It could be seen how much pressure she was under. Xiao Lingyu and Elder Peng couldn't divert their attention to help Xian. However, they were more anxious than Xian. This was because their flames couldn't rush into the transparent energy mass from the beginning. The two of them continued to increase their strength. The transparent energy mass was gradually broken through. The blue divine fire and primal chaos, true fire, slowly poured into it. What are they doing? An expert from the fire sect near the sacrificial flame altar asked. I thought that old man was going to refine his own divine fire. I didn't expect him to want to fuse the two powerful flames together. Although Xiaozi was a careless person, his eyesight wasn't bad. If that's the case, his strength will probably be even more powerful, Xiaozi said. That's not necessarily true. They're using the sacrificial flame altar to fuse the two powerful flames. However, with that old man's body, he won't be able to put it away. I'm afraid it'll be difficult for him to refine it, Xiaozi said as he shook his head. Then why are they fusing the two flames together? If they can't control it, it might backfire, Xiaozi said in confusion. Only they know. However, even if they're using the sacrificial flame altar, it's still very dangerous to fuse the two divine fires. The sacrificial flame altar's resistance isn't very easy to resist, Xiaozi said in a pessimistic tone. The truth was just as Xiaozi said. As the primal chaos, true fire, and the blue divine fire continued to invade, the transparent energy mass struggled more and more violently. This also caused the sacrificial flame altar and the entire pool of fire to counterattack. Although Xian was rather powerful, she was only one person after all. She already felt that she couldn't hold on much longer. Xian knew that she had to hold on. Otherwise, not only would all her previous efforts be wasted, the transparent energy mass would also explode. The transparent energy mass itself would contain the power of the two high-grade flames. It would counterattack with the sacrificial flame altar and the pool of fire at the same time. The three of them would probably die here in an instant. Should we go over and help? Xiaozi asked. We can't. We're all fire-attributed cultivators. If we go over, we'll only be of more help. Our fire-attributed energy will also be summoned by the sacrificial flame altar and attack the three of them together. Xiaozi shook his head and said, if they could really help, Xiaozi wouldn't mind doing so. Although he hated Elder Peng, he wasn't a vicious person. He wouldn't watch the three of them die on the altar. They should find more experts, Xiaozi said again. You don't know much about the sacrificial flame altar. You don't know that the more people there are, the stronger the counterattack of the sacrificial flame altar. It's not something that can be done with more people. Xiaozi shook his head and said with a smile, isn't that old man able to invite an immortal sovereign Xiaozi asked again. The stronger the cultivation of the person who goes up, the stronger the counterattack of the sacrificial flame altar will be. Before Xiaozi could answer, an expert from the fire sect had already spoken. That woman should be at the peak of the late-stage immortal emperor realm. She's actually the most suitable person to go up. Let's see if she can withstand it, Xiaozi added. Regardless of whether she could withstand it or not, Qing Xian had to persist even though she had already spat out mouthfuls of blood and her face was as pale as paper. Elder Peng and Shaolin Yu also knew that Qing Xian was under too much pressure. The two of them were anxious and could only try their best to pour their divine flames, or primal chaos, primordial fire, into the transparent energy ball. After another 10 minutes, Elder Peng's divine flame and Shaolin Yu's primal chaos, primordial fire were all poured into the transparent energy ball. However, the fusion of the two divine flames wasn't over yet. Elder Peng had to retrieve his blood essence and soul essence that he had left in his divine flame, while Shaolin Yu had to continue pouring her blood essence and soul essence into the transparent energy ball. Chapter 405. Qing Xian also knew that this was a critical moment, but the pressure on her was too great. Even though she tried her best to release her aura and circulated her power at the maximum speed, she still felt like a withered leaf in a gale that could wither away at any time. Sensing that the boundless aura was slowly approaching her, Qing Xian took out her divine sword and crazily poured her power into the divine sword. With the support of Qing Xian's power, the divine sword trembled continuously and released waves of domineering and powerful aura fluctuations, suppressing the other auras. However, the divine sword was a divine weapon after all, and Qing Xian did not have any divine power in her body. Even though she was a late-stage immortal emperor and her power was very strong, she knew that she could not hold on for too long. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Qing Xian's power had been completely exhausted. The divine sword's luster began to dim, and the waves of sword aura also began to weaken. Although Shaolin Yu and Elder Peng had already reached the end, they were still one step away. Qing Xian, you must hold on for the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. Elder Peng seemed to have seen through Qing Xian's condition, but he still reminded her. Qing Xian smiled bitterly, but then she clenched her teeth and began to burn her life essence to maintain the output of her power. The divine sword's radiance rose again, and the sword aura it released suppressed all the aura fluctuations in the surroundings once again. She's forcing herself. Even if she can hold on until the end, I'm afraid that half of her cultivation will be destroyed. It's a pity that she's a late-stage immortal emperor with excellent aptitude. She should have been able to advance to the immortal venerable realm. Xiaozi watched from afar and secretly felt that it was not worth it for Qing Xian. Shaolin Yu and Qing Xian did not know that Qing Xian would have to sacrifice herself to ensure the completion of the sacrificial flame. Otherwise, Shaolin Yu would definitely not agree, and Qing Xian might not be willing to sacrifice herself. As for whether or not Elder Peng was aware of this, no one knew. However, the sacrificial flame had already reached this stage. It could be said that there was no turning back. Shaolin Yu and Qing Xian could only brace themselves and continue. If they stopped midway, no one would be able to save their lives. Shaolin Yu occasionally glanced at Qing Xian. He saw that Qing Xian's weak body was releasing such powerful energy to resist the boundless pressure, and Qing Xian's delicate body was constantly trembling, blood, and her face was pale. He could not help but feel sorry for her. After all, Shaolin Yu was the one who would benefit the most from this sacrificial flame. If Qing Xian sacrificed herself, it would naturally be counted on Shaolin Yu's head. 10 minutes passed in the blink of an eye, but for the three people on the stage, it was incomparably long. Almost every moment, Qing Xian was losing a large amount of life essence to maintain the power of the divine sword. If Qing Xian was not a late-stage immortal emperor expert, all her energy would have been sucked away by the divine sword in a few breaths' time. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Qing Xian felt dizzy. She had lost too much of her life essence, which made it hard for her to maintain her soul and body. She said in her heart, "I've tried my best," and then fell on the stage. Qing Xian's somewhat slender divine sword also dimmed. It held on for another 2 breaths' time in the air before it fell on the stage with a clang. At this moment, Elder Peng had coincidentally completely severed his connection with the divine flame. He shouted loudly and released his aura, helping Qing Xian resist the surrounding pressure. Xiaoling Yu's task was not yet complete. He still needed to continuously pour his life essence and soul into the transparent ball of energy that was completely occupied by the 2 high-level flames. Fortunately, he had stored a large amount of blood crystals in his body. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for him to continue. Elder Peng's strength was about the same as Qing Xian's. Naturally, he could resist the boundless pressure for a period of time. However, as he resisted, he also used his mind to take out a milky white pill and send it into Qing Xian's mouth. After sending the pill into Qing Xian's mouth, Elder Peng took out a piece of white silk and wrapped it around Qing Xian's body. Qing Xian's consciousness was muddled. She could not control her body and soul on her own. However, the white silk could temporarily seal her entire body. By the time Elder Peng could not hold on any longer, the 2 flames had already intertwined with each other, constantly invading and fusing with each other. Now that they had stopped accepting Xiao Lingyu's blood soul, Xiao Lingyu's mission had been completed. Due to the severe loss, when he retracted his palm, his body involuntarily swayed, and his head felt a little dizzy. Even so, he did not feed himself any medicinal pills to recuperate. Instead, he pounced in front of Qing Xian without a second thought. "Brother Xiao, don't worry. She's fine for now," Elder Peng reminded him. Then he said, "Quickly take out that hexagonal crystal." Xiao Lingyu's expression was a little flustered. His hands were trembling, not because of himself, but because he was worried about Qing Xian's situation. He crawled to the center of the altar and inserted his fingers into the edge of the groove. With a sudden force, he easily pulled out the hexagonal crystal. Perhaps he used too much strength, or perhaps he was too flustered. Xiao Lingyu held the hexagonal crystal with both hands and rolled a few times before stabilizing himself. Then he crawled to Qing Xian's side. The reason he was in such a sorry state was because he was worried about Qing Xian. If Qing Xian had an accident because of this, he would feel guilty for the rest of his life. It was not that Xiao Lingyu was soft-hearted. After all, Qing Xian was doing this to help him. He was not a heartless fool. After the hexagonal crystal left the groove, the altar stopped trembling. The flames in the fire pool stopped rolling and roaring, and the boundless pressure disappeared. The center of the fire pool regained its calm. Only the energy of the high-level flames above the altar was still trembling slightly. Brother Xiao, with your fire control skills, try to inject some seals into it to speed up the fusion of the 2 flames with your blood soul. Elder Peng patted Xiao Lingyu's shoulder and said, "I'll take care of things here. Qing Xian will be fine." Xiao Lingyu's hands were still trembling, and his breathing was a little chaotic. Elder Peng frowned and said, "Brother Xiao, it's the last moment now. You can't lose your mind because of love. You have to calm down." Elder Peng's voice was like a morning bell ringing in Xiao Lingyu's ears. He could not help but feel refreshed, and his eyes gradually became clear. Xiao Lingyu stood up again, took a deep breath, and began to form seals with his hands. Group after group of seals were formed between Xiao Lingyu's fingers and were then injected into the air. At this time, several experts of the fire sect also flew over. Yixiaozi put away the hexagonal crystal beside Qing Xian and said, "Old man, you're actually willing to give away the divine fire to someone else. It's really puzzling." Elder Peng was also a little weak. He smiled and said, "Could it be that many people in the immortal world say that I'm a stingy person?" Yixiaozi shook his head repeatedly and said, "No, but this divine flame is like your life to a supreme grandmaster in equipment refinement like you. I'm truly unable to imagine exactly what benefits fellow Taoist Xiao gave you to make you be so generous." Elder Peng said, "This has nothing to do with a red-headed ghost like you." Perhaps it was because Yi Xiaozi had refused Elder Peng with a strong attitude, so Elder Peng did not treat Yi Xiaozi well. "I'm just a little regretful that the only Grandmaster Artificer in the immortal world is gone just like that. What will an old man like you use to invite an immortal sovereign in the future?" Yi Xiaozi said with a strange tone, "You'd better watch over the fire source continent. Don't let someone steal the divine fire from under your nose again." Elder Peng retorted, "In fact, neither Yi Xiaozi nor Elder Peng were evil people. It was just that the two of them were not on the right path because of what happened in the past. Is she all right? She was a little too desperate just now." Yi Xiaozi didn't want Elder Peng and Yi Xiaozi to continue arguing, so he changed the topic. "Her life is definitely not in danger, but even if she recovers in the future, not only will her cultivation drop a lot, she will never be able to reach the immortal sovereign stage, let alone transcend the divine tribulation and ascend to the God realm." Before Elder Peng could finish speaking, Yi Xiaozi spoke once more. "Oomph, that's just because you don't know." Elder Peng replied with a cold snort. Yi Xiaozi was a straightforward person. It was not that he had the intention to laugh, but that he had a one-track mind and said whatever he thought of. "Then tell me, do you have any way to reverse the situation so that she can still cultivate like before in the future?" Yi Xiaozi asked, unconvinced. "As long as we find a divine grade material with ice attribute, we can stabilize her body and immortal nascent soul and gradually recover her lost life essence. With the help of the divine grade material in her body, she can naturally advance to the immortal sovereign stage." Elder Peng said after thinking for a while, "This is only a theoretical possibility. Even if you stabilize her body and immortal nascent soul, how can you make her soul safe?" Yi Xiaozi shrugged and asked, "For the characteristics of her soul, refine a divine grade spirit congealing pill." Elder Peng replied, "Refine a divine pill? I remember that Great Grandmaster Peng is a refining Great Grandmaster, not an alchemy Great Grandmaster." Yi Xiaozi seemed to respond strangely, then patted his head and said, "By the way, Great Grandmaster Peng can go to that old man Mao Zhan. He is an alchemy Great Grandmaster, but I heard that Mao Zhan seems to have a bad relationship with you. If you go to him, it will probably be harder than coming to me." Indeed, almost all the top powerhouses in the immortal world knew that Elder Peng and Elder Mao did not have a good relationship. After all, they were both great grandmasters, proud people, and people who live by their skills. Naturally, no one would admit defeat, and it was inevitable that sometimes they would be at loggerheads. Chapter 406. While Elder Peng and Yi Xiaozi were bickering, Shaolin Yu had already cast many seals of the fire control technique he had mastered into the ball of energy that was completely occupied by the two high-level flames. Shaolin Yu's blood soul was accelerating the fusion of the two flames. The originally transparent ball of energy was truly miraculous. Not only could it trap the two high-level flames, but it could also make them fuse with each other. A new high-level flame was gradually forming. Without the support of the sacrificial flame altar, the transparent ball of energy's power was gradually being depleted, and the sacrificial flame had actually reached the end. An hour later, Shaolin Yu's seals had yet to stop, but a purplish-black flame had already formed and was floating steadily in the air. The transparent ball of energy had already disappeared, and Shaolin Yu could clearly feel that he had a very close mental connection with the purplish-black flame that had just formed. Too many of Shaolin Yu's blood souls had been integrated into the purplish-black flame, and it was like a part of Shaolin Yu's body. He could control it without any hindrance. In fact, it was fortunate that Shaolin Yu's blood souls were special and high-grade. Otherwise, not only would it be difficult for the new flame to accept them, but it would also be burned into nothingness in a few moments when it was poured into it. It was also because of Shaolin Yu's high-grade bloodline that he could suppress part of the purplish-black flame's power with his bloodline and control it at will. Of course, this also required the use of fire control techniques. Under the control of Shaolin Yu's fire manipulation technique, The purple-black flames circled in the air from time to time. Sometimes they danced in the air, sometimes they turned into a fire snake, and sometimes they turned into a fire arrow. Even the masters of the fire element sect were dumbfounded. The new divine flame had just formed, and this kid could actually control it like this. Next, with a thought from Shaolin Yu, the purplish-black flame's power was immediately reduced by more than half. Then, it fell into Shaolin Yu's palm and finally sank into Shaolin Yu's body. With the suppression of the high-quality bloodline, the purplish-black flames were unable to pose much of a threat to Shaolin Yu's body. At this moment, they were quietly floating in Shaolin Yu's dantian. Shaolin Yu practiced fire control, and so did his nascent soul of chaos. After the purplish-black flame entered his dantian, Shaolin Yu's nascent soul of chaos constantly performed fire control seals with its tiny hands to deepen its familiarity and control of the purplish-black flame. He accepted it so easily. Little Master Yi Xiao had been stunned when he saw Shaolin Yu control the purple-black flames, and now he was even more astonished. The other experts of the fire sect were even more dumbfounded. They didn't know that Shaolin Yu's bloodline was very strong, nor did they see that Shaolin Yu's physical quality was very high. Even Elder Peng, who had been prepared for this, felt that everything had gone too smoothly in the end. After the primordial fire of chaos merged with the blue divine fire, its power had increased tremendously. It could probably meld a low-grade divine weapon now, but it would not bring any improvement to Shaolin Yu's power and cultivation level. How much longer can she last? Shaolin Yu ignored everyone's astonished gazes. He directly returned to Qing Xian's side and asked with concern. Shaolin Yu had clearly heard the conversation between Elder Peng and Little Master Yi Xiao. She'll be fine for 1,000 years, Elder Peng replied truthfully. Only 1,000 years. Shaolin Yu frowned slightly at first, and then he took out a high-grade jade box and opened it. He said, "This should be a divine treasure of ice. Elder Peng, take a look and see if it'll be useful to her." Elder Peng glanced at it, and then his face changed slightly. He said, "It's actually a divine treasure of ice. Of course it'll be useful. Moreover, it'll be a superb divine treasure to save her, as long as it's useful." Shaolin Yu first nodded, and then he said, "Let's go ask Grandmaster Mao Zhan for help." "All right, I know where he is right now." Elder Peng knew that Qing Xian was in a critical situation that couldn't be delayed, so he didn't hesitate and said, "Hold her in your arms for now. Don't expose any part of her body. We'll set out right now, and we'll be able to find him in 500 or 600 years at most." Shaolin Yu embraced Qing Xian's delicate figure that was wrapped in white silk cloth tightly in his arms, and then he said to Yi Xiao Zi and the other experts of the fire sect, "Thank you for your help. Farewell." Before Yi Xiao Zi and the others could reply, Shaolin Yu had already flown out of the fiery pool with Elder Peng, and they rushed towards the teleportation formation on Fire Source Continent at full speed. Another top expert is about to be born in the immortal dimension. He's so young, yet has actually obtained such fortune. He'll surely attain great heights in the future. Yi Xiao Zi looked at the direction Shaolin Yu vanished towards and sighed with emotion. Just as Elder Peng had said, they'd already arrived at a continent called the Fragrance Continent in a little over 550 years. The only alchemy grandmaster in the immortal dimension, Mao Zhan, was stationed on the Fragrance Continent all year round because there were many precious medicinal herbs on the continent. It was precisely because there were many precious medicinal herbs, and those medicinal herbs emitted a rich fragrance that the Fragrance Continent got its name. Under normal circumstances, there were many cultivators in the immortal dimension. Wherever there were more heavenly treasures, it would attract many immortals to plunder them. However, the Fragrance Continent was different. It had always been under the control of a sect called the Wondrous Pill Sect, and outsiders were not allowed to casually enter the areas that were rich in high-quality medicinal herbs. The Wondrous Pill Sect's overall strength wasn't strong, and there weren't many disciples in the entire sect. However, this sect had been passed down since ancient times, and there had always been at least one alchemy grandmaster. It was precisely because there had always been an alchemy grandmaster in the Wondrous Pill sect that no one dared to behave atrociously on the Fragrance continent. Immortal venerables didn't have to fear the Wondrous Pill sect, but immortal venerables had to ask the alchemy grandmaster for help. After all, immortal venerables had to face the divine tribulation in the future, and they needed the alchemy grandmaster to provide them with divine pills. Only divine pills were effective in healing their injuries, recovery, and cultivation. It could be said that alchemy grandmasters had more face in front of immortal venerables than alchemy grandmasters. Immortal venerables didn't lack divine tools, but divine pills were consumables. Even if immortal venerables didn't lack them now, there was no guarantee that they wouldn't need them in the future. Since immortal venerables gave face to the alchemy grandmaster, they would naturally help the Wondrous Pill sect maintain the order of the Fragrance continent. Therefore, ordinary immortals and those big and small forces in the immortal dimension didn't dare to rashly set foot on the Fragrance continent. It could be said that among the continents in the immortal dimension that had been discovered by immortals, the Fragrance continent was the one that maintained its original appearance the best. It was also because of this that there were many unknown or unexplored places on the Fragrance continent. Moreover, there was no lack of danger. Even the Wondrous Pill sect, which had been entrenched on the Fragrance continent for countless years, didn't dare to say that they knew the entire Fragrance continent like the back of their hand. Elder Peng had made a trip to the Fragrance continent in the past, but not to search for high-grade medicinal herbs, but to exchange insights and experience with the current alchemy grandmaster of the Wondrous Pill sect, Mao Zhen. Unfortunately, the two had a big disagreement at that time and refused to accept each other. In the end, they quarreled until their faces turned red and they parted on bad terms. Since that quarrel, there were rumors in the immortal dimension that alchemy grandmaster Mao Zhen and alchemy grandmaster Peng Jia were at odds and had a deep conflict. The rumors also affected the two grandmasters. After all, when the rumors spread, there were bound to be people who would add oil and vinegar to the fire, causing the grudge between the two grandmasters to deepen. Sometimes, the two would even ridicule each other. The conflict simply couldn't be resolved. If Qing Xian wasn't in a critical situation and only Mao Zhen could save him, Elder Peng wouldn't have come to ask Mao Zhen for help. Having been to the Fragrance continent and having a conversation with Mao Zhen, Elder Peng naturally knew the location of the Wondrous Pill sect. After exiting the teleportation array, he first glanced at the direction and then took the lead to fly away. That Mao Zhen won't refuse us, right? Xiaoling Yu asked worriedly as she followed Elder Peng. If I ask him for help, he'll most likely ridicule me and refuse, Elder Peng said. Then what if I ask him for help? Xiaoling Yu asked again. He'll agree, but he'll raise some conditions as usual. For example, he'll make you agree to help the Wondrous Pill sect maintain their absolute control over the Fragrance continent or ask for a large sum of immortal crystals from you. In any case, every time he helps someone refine a divine pill, he'll raise more than one condition, and most of them aren't simple, Elder Peng replied according to his understanding. As long as he doesn't flatly refuse, it'll be fine, Xiaoling Yu said with a firm expression. The two of them were extremely fast, and it took them less than an hour to arrive at the entrance of the Wondrous Pill sect. The Wondrous Pill sect was located in a valley, and there were no defenses around the valley at all. There were only two boys with lazy expressions standing guard at the entrance of the valley. The two boys had fair skin, bright red mouths, and two small braids, making them look like porcelain dolls. Seeing Xiaoling Yu and Elder Peng arrive, the two boys put away their playful expressions and respectfully bowed first. Then, one of them asked, "May I know the purpose of the two seniors' visit?" Xiaoling Yu stepped forward and replied, "We wish to see your sect's great Grandmaster Mao. Grandmaster has been in seclusion recently, so it's inconvenient for him to meet guests. May I know if the two seniors have an invitation from Grandmaster?" The immortal child asked very politely. "We have an urgent matter to discuss with Grandmaster, so please inform him." Xiaoling Yu replied as he stuffed two storage pouches filled with immortal crystals into the hands of the two immortal children. The two immortal children first looked at the storage pouches, then looked at each other with a joyful expression. One of them said, "Grandmaster is in seclusion, so the two of us don't dare to disturb him. However, we can ask the other seniors first. Then we'll have to trouble you, immortal child," Xiaoling Yu said. It didn't take long for the immortal child to return with a middle-aged cultivator. "So it's Elder Peng who has graced us with your presence. It's our fault for not being able to greet you." The middle-aged cultivator's expression changed slightly after seeing Elder Peng. He then cupped his fists and spoke in a seemingly respectful manner. "Haha, it's fine. I'm only accompanying brother Xiao here to show him the way." Elder Peng smiled warmly. "Oh, then I wonder if this is—" The middle-aged cultivator glanced at Xiaoling Yu, but he couldn't see through Xiaoling Yu's depth. He also didn't know how to address him. After a pause, he asked, "Fellow Taoist, why are you looking for my master?" Chapter 407. The person looked very troubled and said, "My master is in seclusion. We're urgently waiting for Grandmaster Mao to save us. We really can't afford any delays," Xiaoling Yu said earnestly. The person had already seen Xiaoling Yu holding someone in his arms. Now that he heard Xiaoling Yu's words, he understood. However, he still looked troubled. "I've heard of Grandmaster Mao's benevolence. You wouldn't leave us in the lurch, right?" Xiaoling Yu continued. "Of course I wouldn't leave you in the lurch. However, my master's seclusion this time is very important. Before he went into seclusion, he instructed us not to knock on his door unless the Wondrous Pill sect is facing a calamity." The person said helplessly, "I know I came here abruptly, and I don't want to disturb the great Grandmaster's closed-door practice. However, I have no other choice. Please let the great Grandmaster know. I will accept any conditions the great Grandmaster has and do my best to fulfill them," Xiaoling Yu said sincerely. "This old man can vouch for you as well," Elder Peng agreed. "That won't do. As my master's disciple, I don't dare to disobey my master's orders. Please return. Perhaps there's another way." The person shook his head. "Please let me know first," Xiaoling Yu insisted with a pleading expression. Mao Zhan was the only alchemy grandmaster in the entire immortal world who could refine divine pills. Who else could Xiaoling Yu ask for help? What other way could he come up with? "The two of you, please return." Who would have thought that after the person said that, he would shake his fist and turn around to leave? Sigh. Elder Peng could only sigh. However, Xiaoling Yu's expression darkened. After a cold snort, he took a step forward with Qing Xian in his arms. "Senior, please wait." One of the children hurriedly stopped him. However, Xiaoling Yu turned a deaf ear to him. He took another step forward and entered the valley. The person who had greeted Qin Nan previously turned around and said, "What are you trying to do? This is the Wonderful Pill sect. You better not barge in, or else." Before the person could finish speaking, Xiaoling Yu's hand had already wrapped around his neck. A wave of chaos magic directly poured into the person's body, instantly imprisoning him. So what if it's the Wondrous Pill sect? I'm not afraid, even if I have to go against the entire immortal world, let alone a mere Wondrous Pill school. Xiaoling Yu laughed coldly and continued. "Bring me to the place where Grandmaster Mao is in closed-door seclusion. Otherwise, die." In fact, Elder Peng was also very angry. Although he felt that it was a little inappropriate to see Xiaoling Yu flipping out at this moment, and it might cause a lot of trouble, he did not stop her or persuade her. The person's face turned red from Xiaoling Yu's choking. He was also an early-stage Immortal Emperor expert. Earlier, he did not expect Xiaoling Yu to dare to attack him. Moreover, he did not expect Xiaoling Yu to be able to imprison his cultivation in an instant. At this moment, his eyes were wide open. Seeing how agitated Xiaoling Yu was, he was afraid and nodded repeatedly. Xiaoling Yu's expression was grave and stern as he released his hand. However, he did not release the person and only let him lead the way. After a few steps, a few more cultivators from the Wondrous Pill sect surrounded them. However, most of them were below the Immortal Emperor stage. There were not many disciples in the Wondrous Pill sect. This was because their requirements for recruiting disciples were very strict. They had to have the aptitude to become an alchemy grandmaster or grandmaster before they could join. The entire valley was very empty. After such a big commotion, only a few disciples of the Wondrous Pill sect had rushed over. Moreover, no one dared to make a move. The cultivator who was imprisoned by Xiao Lingyu did not dare to stop. He slowly walked forward, and at the same time, he signaled to his fellow sect members with his eyes. After moving forward for a short distance, a white-haired old man who looked a little old blocked the way. "Let him go," the white-haired old man said with a dignified expression. Moreover, his voice carried an extremely powerful soul fluctuation, causing Elder Peng to frown slightly. The white-haired old man's cultivation was very high, and his attainments in the soul were quite profound. Unfortunately, his soul sound wave attack was not very effective against Xiaolingyu. This was because the sound wave attack was directed at Xiaolingyu's sea of consciousness and was immediately absorbed by the grayish-black metal piece in his sea of consciousness. "Call Grandmaster Mao out, and I'll let him go," Xiaolingyu said calmly. "If you don't want to be hunted down by the immortal world's celestial sovereigns, it's better for you to let him go first," the white-haired old man said without backing down. "Don't use the celestial sovereigns to scare me. To tell you the truth, even a celestial sovereign can't do anything to me," Xiaolingyu replied coldly. Then, a purplish-black flame appeared in the palm of his hand. He continued, "If Grandmaster Mao doesn't come out in 10 minutes, I'll turn him into ashes first." As soon as the purplish-black flame appeared, it caused the space to fluctuate violently. Fine spatial cracks had already appeared. The white-haired old man's expression changed greatly. This was because he, who had an extremely high soul realm, could see that the purplish-black flame was very powerful. It was even stronger than ordinary divine flames. At this moment, it was only suppressed and did not erupt with too much power. In the immortal world, there were very few experts who could control such a powerful flame at will. It was reasonable for the white-haired old man to be moved. "Ping, what is the meaning of this?" Seeing that his threat to Xiaolingyu was ineffective, the white-haired old man questioned Elder Peng. "Nothing. It's just that Grandmaster Mao is too arrogant and too difficult to invite, so we have no other choice." Elder Peng sneered. "Do you still expect Senior Brother Mao to come out and help you?" The white-haired old man asked. "If we don't do this, we won't even see Grandmaster Mao's face." Xiaolingyu continued, "Fellow Taoist, let him go first. If there's anything, we can talk about it. Using force won't solve the problem." The white-haired old man was no longer as dignified as before. "I'll say it again. Ask Grandmaster Mao to come out, and I'll let him go," Xiaolingyu insisted. The white-haired old man's expression changed again and again. Finally, he said, "Okay, I'll ask Senior Brother Mao to come out. Go and come back quickly. My patience is not very good," Xiaolingyu replied indifferently. The white-haired old man did not delay and immediately turned to leave. After a full hour, seeing that Xiaolingyu's patience was about to be worn out, the white-haired old man came over with a skinny old man. The old man's face was withered and his back was slightly hunched. He was supporting himself with a dragon-headed walking stick. At this moment, his face was malicious. "Peng Bai, you captured my disciple to threaten me. This is not the demeanor of a grandmaster." The skinny old man stood still and said calmly, "Mao Zhen, don't pretend. Those demeanors are for the world to see. Everyone is not much different from ordinary immortals except for some special methods. Why do you have to pretend to be an otherworldly expert?" Elder Peng said calmly, "Fellow Taoist, let my disciple go. I can help you refine the divine pill, but you have to agree to the conditions. Also, you have to prepare the materials yourself." Mao Zhen was still very calm. Xiaolingyu's heart moved. He withdrew his chaotic, demonic power from the early stage immortal emperor and said, "What conditions does Elder Mao have? A devil Dao cultivator?" Mao Zhen frowned when he felt the aura of the chaotic, demonic power. However, he did not delve into it. He only felt that it was a little strange that someone in the immortal world could cultivate the devil Dao to such a high level. First condition, you have to be like other immortal world experts. You have to acknowledge and help maintain the control of our wondrous pill sect over the fragrance continent. Second condition, this old man's cultivation was interrupted by fellow Taoist and was forced to come out of seclusion. Fellow Taoist, you have to compensate me with a divine tool or 10,000 divine stones. Third condition, go to the Myriad Bat Cave and bring back a King Bodhi pill. Mao Zedong didn't even need to think before stating the three conditions. The first condition was actually something that could be done with just a few words. However, the other two conditions were not easy to fulfill. Mao Zedong, don't go too far. You're just helping me refine a divine pill, yet you want a finished divine artifact. You even want a King Bodhi that you don't even know if it exists. Aren't you opening your lion's mouth a little too big? Elder Peng replied with a little anger. Hee, I didn't beg you to come. If you think the conditions are too harsh, you can find someone else. Mao Zedong laughed fearlessly. Elder Mao, can you confirm whether the King Bodhi pill really exists in the Myriad Bat Cave? Xiaoling Yu asked after a moment of silence. Yes. Mao Zedong nodded. Good. I agree to all three conditions. Xiaoling Yu nodded solemnly. He then took out the transparent scimitar that he had obtained from great thief Nie Yu and said, This is a divine tool. As for the King Bodhi pill, I will go to the Myriad Bat Cave to look for it later. Elder Peng wanted to say something, but he did not know what to say. He could only shake his head helplessly. Mao Zedong directly took the scimitar from Xiaoling Yu's hand. After looking at it for a while, he said with satisfaction, Not bad. Although it is a low-grade divine tool, it has some special effects. Then, Mao Zedong gave the scimitar to the early-stage, immortal emperor disciple in front of everyone. It has always been me who snatches other people's treasures. Today, I will leave this scimitar here. In the future, I will make you pay me back double. Xiaoling Yu was naturally unhappy that he had been taken advantage of. However, he needed Mao Zedong's cooperation in order to save Qing Xian, so he still had to endure it. If you head southeast, you'll find a Myriad Bat Cave in about 5 million kilometers. What I want to remind you is that the Myriad Bat Cave is extremely dangerous. You must be careful. Mao Zedong pretended to remind him. Xiaoling Yu handed Qing Xian to Elder Peng and said, Help me take care of her. Elder Peng had originally wanted to tag along, but he no longer had his divine flame. His identity as a great Grandmaster Artificer was of no use in the face of danger. Moreover, it was impossible for him to bring Qing Xian along, and it was also impossible for him to leave Qing Xian behind by herself. He could only nod and say, Brother Xiao, don't worry. Xiaoling Yu looked at Qing Xian again. Then, he jumped up and went to the Myriad Bat Cave alone. Mao Zedong, let's take a look at her situation first. What materials are needed to refine a spirit-congealing pill for her soul characteristics? After Xiaoling Yu left, Elder Peng opened a hole in the white silk wrapped around Qing Xian and said to Mao Zedong, Chapter 408. After flying at full speed for close to a day, Xiaoling Yu was only 5 million miles away from the wondrous pill sect. He saw a huge river in front of him. This river was tens of thousands of feet wide. The water flowed rapidly, and there were steep cliffs on both sides of the river. He flew to the other side. Before he reached the other side, he saw many small caves on the cliff in front of him. Moreover, there were many black bat-like demonic beasts of different sizes going in and out of those small caves. It was obvious that Xiaoling Yu had already reached the 10,000 Bat Cave. The Bodhi King he was looking for was inside. This Bodhi King was definitely not easy to find. Otherwise, Mao Zedong would have come to retrieve him himself. Even an expert like Mao Zedong would not easily enter the 10,000 Bat Cave. That was why he had asked someone else to retrieve him. Xiaoling Yu knew that this trip would be dangerous. However, he was not worried about himself. After all, he had the protection of his spiritual abode and the invisibility cloak that he had refined for a long time. Teleporting from the East Imperial Continent to the Fiery Source Continent, and then from the Fiery Source Continent to the Waft Fragrance Continent took a long time. During this time, Xiaoling Yu had been refining the invisibility cloak with the chaos demonic nascent soul. This was especially so after he obtained the purplish-black primordial chaos fire. His refining speed of the invisibility cloak had increased tremendously. Even though he had not completely refined it yet, he could easily conceal his presence and aura with the invisibility cloak. With the invisibility cloak and the spiritual abode, why would Shaolin Yu fear the dangers of the 10,000 Bat Cave? This was also one of the important reasons why he had agreed to Mao Zedong's request so readily. If he hid in the spiritual abode and charged into the 10,000 Bat Cave, although it would be very safe, it would be difficult to conceal the presence of the spiritual abode. It would definitely attract countless bat demons to stop him. As such, Shaolin Yu aimed for a small cave and put on the invisibility cloak halfway. His figure immediately disappeared from the sky above the river. The invisibility cloak's effect was miraculous. As long as Shaolin Yu did not come into contact with anything tangible, or if he did not use any spells or attacks, his presence and aura would not be exposed, unless an immortal supremacy carefully scanned him with their divine senses. Even though the 10,000 Bat Cave was dangerous, it was impossible for there to be any honorable realm cultivators there. Otherwise, the wonderful pill sect would have been destroyed countless times over. The inside of the cave was very dark. Bat demons hung upside down on the walls of the cave. Moreover, the hissing sounds of the bat demons could be heard from all directions. If a timid person were to enter this place, they would probably be trembling in fear. Shaolin Yu had been to countless dangerous places and had encountered all kinds of harsh environments. Naturally, he would not be afraid in the cave of 1,000 bats. He carefully moved forward while dodging the bat demons that pounced on him from the front or behind. Regardless of whether the bat demon went out or returned, it would usually fly in the middle of the cave. Shaolin Yu had been hiding at the bottom of the cave. She was also very careful, so it was not easy for the bat demon to bump into her. Gradually, they entered the depths of the cave of 1,000 bats. From the outside, the 10,000 Bat Cave looked like a long cliff with countless small caves. But from the inside, the caves were all connected to each other. It was like a natural maze. However, not long after they entered, Shaolin Yu realized that this was not a maze. It was just that there were countless caves that did not follow any pattern. The deeper they went into the cave of 1,000 bats, the wider the intersecting caves became. The density of the bat demons gradually decreased, but the bat demons' auras became stronger. After only 4 hours, Shaolin Yu had already encountered several bat demons that were comparable to immortal lords. These bat demons with higher cultivation levels were mostly alone. At most, they would gather in groups of 2 or 3. Moreover, their hind claws were hanging on the stone walls above their heads. They looked like they were sleeping soundly. After going deeper into the cave for a few hours, Shaolin Yu suddenly arrived at a rather spacious cave. The cave was dark, but there seemed to be countless stars on all sides. Upon closer inspection, he realized that there were many fruits that glowed with a blood-red light on the stone walls. Shaolin Yu had stayed in the cave of 1,000 bats for most of the day. After entering the cave, he scanned the surroundings and immediately looked up. It was pitch black above his head. If an ordinary person was here, they would not be able to see anything. But Shaolin Yu saw a huge bat demon in the darkness. The bat demon's 2 fleshy wings were like black canvases. They were flat on the stone walls above his head, and they were hundreds of feet long. Waves of powerful auras gushed down from the top of his head and spread out from the caves. No other bat demons dared to stay in the vicinity. This was a bat demon that was comparable to an immortal lord. Judging from its undulating body, it was probably also sleeping soundly. Bat demons had very sharp senses. They would immediately wake up at the slightest movement and spread their wings to pounce. An emperor-level bat demon's senses were naturally stronger. However, even an emperor-level bat demon's senses could not compare to the divine senses of an immortal lord. Hence, Shaolin Yu did not have to worry too much. He carefully walked to one of the stone walls of the cave and began to observe the blood-red fruits. These fruits were blood bodhi. Although they were all high-grade medicinal herbs, they could not compare to the king bodhi that Shaolin Yu was looking for. The king bodhi, as its name implied, was the king of all Bodhi fruits. Its quality was much higher than any other Bodhi fruit. This was because the king Bodhi could be considered divine. If the king Bodhi existed in the cave of 1,000 bats, then it must be guarded by very powerful bat demons or a large group of bat demons. Even Mao Zhan would not dare to enter the cave easily. The number of bat demons in the cave of 1,000 bats was uncountable. If Xiao Yu had not been able to enter the cave invisibly, he would have been attacked by waves of bat demons and had no choice but to retreat. Mao Zhan must have been here before. Facing countless bat demons was probably a headache for him. After searching all 4 walls, Xiao Yu did not find the king Bodhi. He slowly retreated from the cave. From the beginning to the end, the emperor-level bat demon above his head did not make the slightest movement. Naturally, Xiao Yu would not touch the blood Bodhi on the stone wall. If he did, he would inevitably expose himself and his aura. If he was not careful, the emperor-level bat demon would sense him and bring him unnecessary trouble. For the next month or so, Xiao Yu continued to explore the depths of the cave of 1,000 bats. He found 7 or 8 caves with Bodhi fruits. Each of these caves was guarded by an emperor-level bat demon of varying cultivation levels. Xiao Yu was quite patient. He did not act rashly. But now, he had circled the depths of the cave of 1,000 bats once, and still could not find the king Bodhi. He was a little suspicious. Was the king Bodhi really here? Was that old fellow Mao Zhan deliberately making things difficult for him so that he would not refine the elixir for him? Although he was becoming more and more suspicious, he still retained a glimmer of hope and confidence. He had no intention of retreating. Heaven did not disappoint those who persevered. Another 2 months passed. Xiao Yu followed a strange sound and found an underground river. Almost all the movements in the cave of 1,000 bats were made by the bat demons. Moreover, almost all the sounds were made by the bat demons. But the sound that Xiao Yu heard earlier also sounded like the cry of a monster. But he was sure that it was not made by the bat demons. So, Xiao Yu followed the sound. When he saw the underground river, Xiao Yu thought that the strange sound he heard earlier was made by the flowing water of the river. He carefully examined the river and found that this was not the case. So, he followed the direction of the underground river. After about the time it took to brew a cup of tea, he reached the end of the underground river. The water flowed straight down, forming a waterfall. Below the waterfall was a pool. In front of the waterfall was a pitch-black hollow in the belly of the mountain. Opposite the waterfall was a straight and steep stone wall. On the wall, there were countless Bodhi fruits that sparkled like stars. At this point, the strange sound that Xiao Yu heard earlier became even more obvious. It was obvious that there was another type of monster in the pool at the bottom of the mountain. Moreover, the aura that they exuded was even more powerful. It made Xiao Yu's heart palpitate. If there really is a Bodhi king in the cave of 1,000 bats, then he can only hide here. With a thought, Xiao Yu slowly flew into the belly of the mountain and searched for the Bodhi king on the stone walls on all 4 sides. After 100 breaths' time, Xiao Yu excitedly discovered that the deeper he went into the pool, the higher the grade of the Bodhi fruits on the stone walls. This made him feel that he was 1 step closer to the Bodhi king. When Xiao Yu landed on the surface of the pool, the surface of the water suddenly splashed, and a huge black and green toad-like Yao beast floated out of the water. The monster's appearance was too ugly. Its 2 protruding eyeballs shone with a demonic light. Its sudden appearance really gave Xiao Yu a fright. After this demon beast came out of the water, a few other similar demon beasts came out of the water one after another. They all opened their mouths and spat out a long and wide scarlet tongue, each pulling down a few Bodhi fruits from the stone wall. After that, they flew into the cave at the source of the waterfall one after another, croaking loudly before disappearing from sight. They must have gone out to look for food as a group. This is an excellent opportunity for me. Although this was what he thought, Xiao Yu still did not dare to enter the water carelessly. This was because he did not know if there were more toad-like monsters below. The cultivation levels of the toad-like monsters that had just left were all emperor level. This made Xiaoling Yu regard this pool as an extremely dangerous place. On the stone walls above the pool, Xiaoling Yu searched everywhere, but he still could not find the Bodhi King. He felt that the Bodhi King must be below the water surface. He had to go down and take a look. After waiting patiently for nearly an hour, Xiaoling Yu saw that the toad-like monsters had not returned. There were also no other monsters emerging from the bottom of the pool. Thus, Xiaoling Yu entered the water. Although the invisibility cloak was miraculous, it could not come into contact with tangible substances. Otherwise, it would be exposed. The pool water was also a type of tangible substance. When Xiaoling Yu entered the pool, not only would there be the sound of water splashing, but his entire body would also be enveloped by the pool water. There was no way for him to hide. Chapter 409. After searching for a long time, his target had finally appeared. Xiaoling Yu could not hide his excitement. However, the environment here was different. He did not let his guard down because of his excitement. Instead, he scanned the area. He did not know if it was because he was too nervous or too excited. Xiaoling Yu felt that when he focused all his attention on the King Bodhi, he was also locked on by a hidden aura. Maybe it's because I'm too nervous. Xiaoling Yu hesitated for a moment. Seeing that there was no danger, he took a deep breath and reached out for the King Bodhi. However, just as his hand was about to touch the almost transparent King Bodhi, a rapid stream of water rolled up from the bottom of the pool and instantly wrapped around his body. At the same time, a huge force surged into Xiaoling Yu's body. He could not move at all. It was as if he was tied up by a very powerful rope. Xiaoling Yu's heart skipped a beat. Then, the purplish-black, chaotic, primordial flame came out of his body. As soon as the primordial flame appeared, Xiaoling Yu felt much more relaxed. The feeling of being tied down disappeared. However, at this moment, another stream of water rushed towards him. He roared and used one of his arms to form a dragon fist. He smashed it towards the stream of water. Bang! An explosion sounded from the water. The pool water around Xiaoling Yu was immediately shaken away. His body was also pushed out of the water by the stream of water. Splash! The pool water spread out in all directions. A toad-like demonic beast revealed its huge head. Its two demonic eyes glowed with a dark green light. They stared at Xiaoling Yu. The anger in its eyes was obvious. Croak! The demon beast let out a cry, and a dark green water arrow immediately flew out of its mouth, flying towards Xiaoling Yu. Xiaoling Yu felt that he had been locked on. Therefore, he did not dodge. In the next moment, he held the silver moon broken sword tightly in his hand and slashed out. Although the silver moon broken sword shattered the water arrow, Xiaoling Yu's body was once again pushed up a few hundred feet. However, before he could stabilize his body had already disappeared under the effect of the invisibility divine robe. Xiaoling Yu's sudden disappearance caused the toad-like demon beast pair of big eyes to immediately narrow. From its body, there was a very powerful wave of thought, sweeping in all directions. This toad-like demonic beast had the cultivation of the late stage of the martial monarch level. There was no need to doubt its strength. However, it could not compare to the divine sense of a celestial prime. Therefore, it could not find Xiaoling Yu's location. Although Xiaoling Yu was temporarily unharmed, he did not dare to rashly fall into the water again. This was because as long as the invisibility divine robe fell into the water again, his body would be exposed, and then he would receive the fierce attacks of this demonic beast. The demonic beast's attack might not be able to do anything to Xiaoling Yu. However, if it guarded the King Bodhi medallion with all its might, Xiaoling Yu would also have a headache. This stalemate lasted for a few hours. Xiaoling Yu did not act rashly. The demonic beast continued to float on the surface of the water, looking more patient than Xiaoling Yu. However, not long after, waves of croaking sounds came from the direction of the underground river. At the same time, there were waves of bat demons hissing. The few toad-like demonic beasts that had gone out to look for food had returned. After a few moments, they all fell into the pool with a splash. Then, a dense swarm of bat demons rushed over from the direction of the underground river. In the blink of an eye, they filled the mountainside. These bat demons kept hissing at the toad-like demonic beasts in the pool, as if they were angrily protesting. The toad-like demonic beasts, on the other hand, extended their long and wide tongues from time to time, sucking the bat demons into their big mouths. These toad-like demonic beasts were actually feeding on the bat demons. Even though Xiao Yu had been carefully and quickly dodging, there were simply too many bat demons here. They were too dense. Before he could hold on for 20 breaths of time, he was exposed because he had bumped into a bat demon. Then, countless bat demons surrounded him and rushed over fearlessly. Unable to hide his body anymore, Xiao Yu released the chaotic primordial fire. These bat demons that lived in dark places disliked high-level flames the most. They also feared high-level flames the most. Therefore, when they saw the purplish-black chaotic primordial fire and felt that its power was too strong, they only surrounded it and did not dare to rush over. The bat demons were not very intelligent. Previously, Xiao Yu did not harm them, so they did not have much hatred for Xiao Yu. Very soon, they turned their attention back to the toad-like demonic beasts on the surface of the pool. Countless bat demons rushed forward one after another like black arrows, continuously attacking the surface of the pool. However, the toad-like demonic beasts had gathered together. Their tongues were like invincible whips that swept in all directions. The bat demons rushing over were just sending themselves to their deaths. At this time, Xiao Yu took the opportunity to retract the chaotic primordial fire and hide his body again. He hid in a crack in the stone wall so that he would not be exposed again. However, it did not take long before Emperor-level bat demons rushed over. Moreover, they brought along countless monarch-level bat demons. The bat demon's cultivation was not as high as the toad-like demonic beasts below. Moreover, they were at a natural disadvantage because of the toad-like demonic beasts below. However, they had the advantage in numbers. If they continued to attack crazily, the toad-like demonic beasts below would not have an easy time. Xiao Yu watched from the side with fear. If he did not have the invisible divine robe, once he was blocked by the bat demons, even if he was not weak, he would probably be exhausted to death. It was no wonder that Mao Zhen and the experts of the Wonderful Pill sect did not dare to come over to collect the Bodhi King, even though they knew that he was here. The bat demons had counterattacked the toad-like demonic beasts more than once or twice. The reason why the toad-like demonic beasts could still stay here safely was because they had a late Emperor-level bat demon. Although the bat demons were numerous, they did not have a late Emperor-level bat demon. Therefore, every time they attacked, they would return without success. They would still be hunted down by the toad-like demonic beasts. Croak. Seeing that the ordinary late Emperor-level toad-like demonic beasts could not hold on any longer, the late Emperor-level toad-like demonic beast suddenly let out a loud cry, causing the entire mountainside to tremble. Then, a powerful aura surged up, instantly wiping out more than half of the bat demons that remained in the mountainside. The great Emperor-level bat demon seemed to be very good at judging the situation. He immediately called for his people to retreat. In a few moments, the mountainside was empty. Xiao Yu was a little depressed. He had originally thought that he could watch from the sidelines and wait for the bat demons and the toad-like demonic beasts to fight until both sides were injured. Then, he would sit back and reap the benefits. Unfortunately, these bat demons were so cowardly. The moment the late Emperor-level toad-like demonic beasts appeared, they all fled. Xiao Yu's plan became a pipe dream. A late Emperor-level toad-like demonic beast was already a headache for Xiao Yu. Now that there were a few more late Emperor-level toad-like demonic beasts, it would be even more difficult for Xiao Yu to obtain the Bodhi King. Xiao Yu did not dare to act blindly without thinking. He could only continue to wait for an opportunity. He decided that if there was really no better opportunity, he would wait until the late Emperor-level toad-like demonic beasts left to hunt for food again. Then, he would force his way in. A month passed. The Emperor-level toad-like demonic beast that had already sunk into the water did not emerge. Half a year later, the water surface was still very calm. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye, and they still didn't show any signs of coming out to look for food. As for the late-stage emperor-level toad, it slowly sank into the water. It was only then that Xiaoling Yu realized that emperor-level demonic beasts would definitely be able to sustain themselves for a very long time. They definitely wouldn't come out to hunt for food every few days. I don't know how long it will take to refine a divine pill. I can't wait any longer. Xiaoling Yu's patience was worn out. He took a deep breath and slowly sank into the water again. There was a saying in the secular world: if you're willing to be cut to pieces, you'll dare to pull the emperor off his horse. Now that Qing Xian was in a critical situation, Xiaoling Yu couldn't care less. Qing Xian was willing to risk her life for him, so he naturally wasn't a coward. This time, as soon as Xiaoling Yu fell into the water, several water arrows flew towards him, and he was pushed out of the water again. It was obvious that the toad-like demonic beasts were very vigilant, or perhaps the late-stage emperor-level toad had already informed everyone to be careful. Xiaoling Yu had long expected this situation to happen, so he didn't panic. He hid in his spiritual abode and let it rush down quickly. Unfortunately, when his spiritual abode rushed down, he was depressed to find that all the toad-like demonic beasts, including the late-stage emperor-level toad, were actually guarding the King Bodhi pill. Xiaoling Yu couldn't appear quickly and quickly take the King Bodhi pill away. They already knew what Xiaoling Yu was going to do, so they were very focused on protecting him. After thinking for a while, Xiaoling Yu steeled his heart and invited out the more than 1,000 armored puppets that he had already refined. Then, he ordered them to attack at the same time. These more than 1,000 armored puppets might not be very strong individually, but at least their skin was rough and their flesh was thick. Their armor's defense was extremely strong. When they charged together, they were like a steel fortress, giving people a heavy sense of oppression. The toad-like monster beasts were also shocked by the appearance of so many iron-armored puppets. But soon after, they shouted at the same time, and a dark green light curtain suddenly appeared, protecting them inside and blocking the iron-armored puppets outside. This isn't enough. Xiaoling Yu smiled disdainfully and slashed at the dark green light curtain with his silver moon-broken blade. However, the light curtain was also incomparably strong and could actually bounce off the armored puppet's attacks. However, no matter how strong the light curtain was, it gradually showed signs of collapsing under the constant bombardment of more than 1,000 armored puppets. In addition, Xiaoling Yu was constantly burning with the purple-black primal chaos true fire. The dark green light curtain only lasted for less than the time to drink a cup of tea before it exploded with a loud bang. After the light curtain exploded, the toad-like demonic beasts stretched out their tongues at the same time, sweeping the armored puppets around and messing up their formation. Chapter 410. However, even though the tongues could sweep away the armored puppets, they couldn't stop the puppets from rushing over again. The armored puppets would occasionally send out beams of divine light to attack, causing damage to the tongues. If this continued, Xiaoling Yu was certain that the toad-like monsters wouldn't be able to last until the end. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to attack. Instead, he focused all his attention on controlling the thousands of armored puppets to attack wildly. The toad-like monsters seemed to know that if this continued, it would be very disadvantageous for them. Therefore, after they persevered for a while, they felt a constant stabbing pain coming from their tongues. Together, they cried out loudly and quickly joined their front claws to form a circle. Then, they began to make the circle spin continuously. The auras of several toads instantly condensed into one, causing the pool water to spin continuously. Hurricanes formed and swept up all the armored puppets, making it difficult for them to stabilize their bodies. Xiaoling Yu was the same. As the pool water spun, he couldn't stabilize his body at all. Therefore, he hid in his divine abode. That toad, a late-stage, emperor-level expert, still stood guard in front of the stone wall, blocking the King Bodhi behind him. I don't believe that you can keep spinning. Xiaoling Yu was in his divine abode. He wasn't anxious at all. He just stared outside with a solemn expression. The whirlpool outside was too strong. Even the divine abode was being swept up continuously. However, whether it was the divine abode or the armored puppets, they only found it difficult to stabilize. They didn't suffer the slightest damage. These toad-like monsters were able to live in the cave of 1,000 bats and didn't fear the countless bat monsters. They were indeed quite capable. Even Mao Zedong must have been here before. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so sure that the king Bodhi was here. However, he must have fought with these toads before. It was just that he couldn't win. These toads naturally couldn't keep spinning forever. Not long after, they stopped. Then they all looked panting. The armored puppets swayed for a while before they slowly stabilized. Shaolin Yu left his divine abode again and used his mind to control the armored puppets to fight. Countless bat monsters once again gathered above the pool, probably sensing the fierce battle here. Among them, the Emperor-level bat monsters observed the situation in the pool. Then, they ordered countless bat monsters below the Emperor level to pounce down again. Kill you while you're down. The bat demons seemed to know this as well. Seeing that the bat demons had arrived, Shaolin Yu covered her body with the chaotic primordial flame so that the bat demons would not dare to attack her. In the beginning, the bat demons also attacked the armored puppets. However, their sharp fangs and claws could not harm the armored puppets. When they discovered that the armored puppets were attacking the toad-like demon beasts that they hated the most, they gave up on attacking the armored puppets and focused all their attention on the toad-like demon beasts. Even the Emperor-level bat demons that hadn't moved before pounced down and joined the battle. Shaolin Yu and the thousands of armored puppets had already given the toad-like monsters a headache. Now, with the addition of countless bat monsters, it was even harder for them to hold on. The ordinary Emperor-class toads began to show serious injuries. The late-stage Emperor-class toad knew that the situation was bad. It let out a loud roar and unleashed its aura to wipe out countless bat demons. It also knocked aside the armored golems. Then it used its tongue to suck King Bodhi into its mouth. Shaolin Yu was anxious. She controlled the thousands of puppets to surround the late-stage Emperor-class toad. She held the silver moon broken blade and bathed in the purplish-black chaotic primordial flame as she charged over. As for the ordinary Emperor-class toads, they were too tired to resist the bat demon's attacks to help their boss. Croak. The late-stage Emperor-class toad was having a hard time resisting the attacks of the thousands of puppets. After all, these puppets were used by Shaolin Yu to deal with immortal supremes. How could a late-stage Emperor-class demon beast be able to resist them so easily? It cried out anxiously. Then, the ordinary Emperor-class toads all self-destructed without hesitation. Several Emperor-class existences self-destructed at the same time. The power was naturally incomparably violent. Shaolin Yu hid in her divine abode without a second thought. The 1,000-odd puppets had solid armor for defense. Although they had been blown far away and looked dispirited, the damage wasn't great. The bat demons didn't have it any better. In just an instant, none of the bat demons below the Emperor-class level were left. Even the Emperor-class bat demons were injured by the explosion and were all sent flying out of the mountain. What Shaolin Yu didn't expect was that after the toad-like demon beasts self-destructed, the energy that gushed out from their bodies was all absorbed by the late-stage Emperor-class toad after creating terrifying shockwaves. Then, the remaining toad-like demon beast's aura soared all the way to the peak of the late-stage Emperor class in the blink of an eye. Moreover, it was only a hair's breadth away from the Immortal Supreme class. So what if you used such a vicious spell to increase your strength? As long as you're not at the Immortal Supreme class, I can torture you to death. Shaolin Yu was still not in a hurry. When the explosion subsided, he once again left the divine abode. Under Shaolin Yu's thoughts, the armored puppets began to move again. They once again surrounded the toad demon beast and began to attack. After the huge increase in strength, the toad became even more ferocious. However, even a tiger couldn't fight against many wolves. Gradually, it couldn't hold on any longer. The self-destruction of the few Emperor-class toads had already razed the mountain to the ground. Even the cave of 1,000 bats no longer existed. The armored puppets and the late-stage Emperor-class toad were already exposed beside the surging river. Even the cultivators of the wondrous pill sect, who were 5 million miles away, looked over in shock. The toad held on for a while longer. Seeing that it couldn't defeat its opponent, it began to flee. The armored puppets could besiege the toad, but they couldn't stop it. Xiao Lingyu put away all the armored puppets and then entered the divine abode to give chase. This toad wasn't known for its speed, and the speed of the divine abode was faster than that of an ordinary immortal supreme class cultivator. It couldn't escape no matter how hard it tried. After the divine abode caught up with the toad, it ruthlessly slammed into it. After being hit, the toad's aura weakened a little. Moreover, its body was injured. After being hit several times, the toad's speed was greatly reduced. Xiao Lingyu released the armored puppets and surrounded it. In the end, the toad despaired. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for it to escape. Therefore, its body began to swell. It seemed that it was going to self-destruct. Xiao Lingyu could have hidden in the divine abode. No matter how the toad self-destructed, it wouldn't hurt him. However, the Bodhi King was still in its stomach. If it self-destructed, the Bodhi King would probably disappear with it. Therefore, he took a huge risk and rushed toward the toad. When the toad saw the enemy rushing toward it, it reflexively stretched out its tongue, wrapped it around the attacker, and swallowed him into its stomach. Once the self-destruction started, it couldn't be stopped unless a supreme class cultivator came over and suppressed it with a great divine ability. Xiao Lingyu entered the toad's stomach and quickly found the Bodhi King. He put it into a high-grade jade box. Just as King Bodhi was put away by Xiao Lingyu, before he could do anything else, the toad's body exploded with a loud bang. Xiao Lingyu was at the center of the explosion. Naturally, he suffered the greatest impact. This was also the reason why the toad swallowed him into its stomach. Although he couldn't hide in the divine abode in time, the invisibility divine robe on Xiao Lingyu's body was a divine artifact. It also had the defensive power of an ordinary divine artifact. Therefore, the toad's self-destruction couldn't kill Xiao Lingyu. This was also the biggest reason why Xiao Lingyu dared to charge over. It was impossible for him to die. However, after the toad's self-destruction, Xiao Lingyu didn't have it easy either. The invisibility divine robe helped him absorb most of the impact. However, that small amount of impact still broke countless bones in his body. His chi and blood were in turmoil. Even the chaos demon nascent soul spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. The self-destruction of a late-stage emperor-level demon beast was even more powerful. Not only did it create a huge crater with a diameter of no less than 10,000 miles, but it also created a huge black hole in space. However, this black hole closed up in an instant. Xiao Lingyu put away the armored puppets that had been blasted far away. He endured the turmoil in his body and hid in the divine abode. Xiao Lingyu didn't return to the wonderful pill sect directly. First, he let the divine abode fly into space. He found an ordinary-looking planet and sank deep into the ground. Only then did he let the divine abode stop. He took out the jade bathtub from the divine abode. Then, he poured the medicinal soup he had prepared in advance into the bathtub. He began to use the body transformation technique to heal his injuries. Xiao Lingyu's injuries were too severe. This ordinary medicinal soup could only stabilize his injuries. It couldn't completely heal him. A few months later, Xiao Lingyu returned to the wonderful pill sect's encampment. Although his complexion wasn't good, he didn't seem to be in too much trouble. With such a huge commotion in the Myriad Bat Cave, the wonderful pill sect, as the masters of the Piaoxiang continent, naturally sent people to investigate. The situation there had already reached Mao Zhan's ears. Although he didn't want to believe it, Mao Zhan knew that it was Xiao Lingyu who had created it. Originally, he thought that Xiao Lingyu hadn't returned for a long time. Most likely, he had fallen. However, Elder Peng said that the soul imprint he had left on his Xiao Lingyu hadn't disappeared. Now that Xiaoling Yu was standing in front of Mao Zhan naturally didn't have any doubts. He only asked, "Has the Bodhi King been retrieved?" Xiaoling Yu didn't answer. He just handed the jade box to Mao Zhan. Then, he went to check on Qing Xian, who was lying on a wooden bed. At this time, Qing Xian's body was wrapped in a layer of ice crystals. She was still unconscious. However, Xiaoling Yu didn't feel any life essence flowing out her body. "We have already fused the frost essence in her body. Now her body is fine. Her life essence is gradually recovering. Moreover, because of the divine grade in her body, it will be easier for her to absorb and refine divine power in the future. It will be easier for her to advance to the immortal venerable realm compared to ordinary late-stage emperors," explained Elder Peng. "When can you refine the divine pill?" Chapter 411. As long as the materials are ready, I can refine it at any time. Mao Zhan had already put away the King Bodhi and replied straightforwardly. Elder Peng sent a list of materials to Xiaoling Yu and said, "Among these materials, I only have 3. Xiaoling Yu glanced at it and found that she didn't have any and couldn't help frowning. There was a saying in the secular world, "A clever woman can't cook without rice." No matter how powerful Mao Zhan was in alchemy, he couldn't refine anything without materials. In fact, among these materials, except for one, this old man has all the rest. Mao Zhan said, "If you have any conditions, just say it." Xiaoling Yu said directly, "I have carefully collected these materials for many years. All of them are treasures. Naturally, I can't give them away for nothing. Don't beat around the bush. What conditions do you have? Just say it." Xiaoling Yu impatiently took over Mao Zhan's words. "The conditions are not high. 10,000 low-grade divine stones will do," Mao Zhan said with a smile, looking like he was sure to eat Xiaoling Yu. 10,000 divine stones is not high. Elder Peng immediately replied angrily, "If you think it's high, you can collect it yourself. I don't have to sell it." Mao Zhan said indifferently, "I don't have any divine stones on me." Xiaoling Yu shook her head. "Then it's okay to exchange it with a low-grade divine weapon." Mao Zhan said easily, "No need. I have 10,000 low-grade divine stones here." Before Xiaoling Yu could speak, Elder Peng had already answered and took out a storage bag. Mao Zhan took the storage bag unceremoniously. After glancing at it with his immortal awareness, he looked satisfied and said, "Now, I only lack one main material, and this main material can actually be found in the Piao Xiang continent." "What main material? Where can I find it?" Xiaoling Yu asked. If the spirit congealing pill to be refined is not targeted at her soul characteristics, if anyone can take it, then there is no need for this main material. For her soul condition, this main material can be found at the extreme north of the fragrance continent. It is called the demon head ice soul grass. Mao Zhan first responded and then introduced, the demon head ice soul grass actually grows from the head of the type of snow demon. It's snow white in color and looks exactly the same as the hair of the snow demon. It's very difficult to distinguish. You have to search carefully with your immortal sense to find it. Furthermore, in the extreme northern regions, there are countless snow demons. However, the demon head ice soul grass that grows from the top of their heads is 1 in a billion. Whether or not you can obtain the demon head ice soul grass completely depends on your luck. Luck? It seems that my luck has always been good. Xiaoling Yu said a few more words to Elder Peng. Then, without a moment's delay, he flew directly to the north. The fragrance continent was vast. It took a long flight from the wondrous Pill Sec station to the extreme north. Xiaoling Yu did not have the patience, so after leaving the wondrous Pill Sec station, he directly entered the divine dwellings. It took him less than a day to reach the extreme north of the fragrance continent. This was a world of ice and snow. Although it was bitterly cold, the environment had no effect on Xiaoling Yu, who had the primal chaos fire. As soon as he arrived at the North Pole, Xiaoling Yu released his immortal sense with all his might and began to search around. In this world of ice and snow, there were indeed countless snow demons. Although these snow demons were of different shapes and species, they all had one common characteristic. which was that they were all snow white. If they quietly crawled in the snow, it was impossible to find them with the naked eye. Under the cover of his immortal sense, Xiao Lingyu could easily find these snow demons. However, after searching for a full month, he still did not find a shadow of the demonic beast Ice Soulgrass. Xiao Lingyu could be said to have been forced to a dead end. Right now, he had to find a demonic head, Ice Soulgrass. There was no other way, so even if he was anxious, he could only persevere. Another few months passed. Xiao Lingyu used his immortal sense to search inch by inch. At the same time, he quickly moved his position and carefully investigated the places he passed by. However, he still did not find anything. During this period, he encountered some powerful snow demons. However, these snow demons had a gentle temperament. When they saw Xiao Lingyu retreat, they did not chase after him. A year passed, and he did not find anything. 3 years passed, and he still did not find anything. 10 years passed, and Xiao Lingyu was still frowning as he flew in the snowy sky. 50 years passed, and Xiao Lingyu had already begun to attack those snow demons that howled at him. His patience had been completely worn out. If it was not for the sake of saving Qing Xian, Xiao Lingyu would not have persisted in searching in this monotonous world of ice and snow for 100 years. However, even after searching for 100 years, there was still no trace of the demonic beast Ice Soulgrass. Xiao Lingyu had never heard of grass growing out of a demonic beast's head. However, he knew that there were all sorts of strange things in this world. That Mao Zhen was a great grandmaster. There was no need for him to fool Xiao Lingyu with this. However, the longer he stayed here, the less time Mao Zhen had to refine the elixir. Xiao Lingyu could not remain calm. He felt that those snow demons that howled at him were mocking him, so he attacked and killed them. Those snow demons howled at Xiao Lingyu because Xiao Lingyu had invaded their territory. They were hinting at Xiao Lingyu to quickly leave, not to attack or provoke him. However, those snow demons were unlucky. They did not know what state Xiao Lingyu was in. It was unknown whether it was because he had attacked too many times or because the injured snow demon had called for its friends. In short, just 110 years after Xiao Lingyu came to the bitter cold of the northern part of the Piaoxiang continent, he was surrounded by countless snow demons. Among these snow demons, there was only one early-stage emperor-level powerhouse. Naturally, they could not do anything to Xiao Lingyu. After venting his anger by killing a few dozen snow demons, he calmly retreated. However, Xiao Lingyu had an idea and returned to the place where he had been surrounded. Those countless snow demons had not retreated yet. They rushed towards Xiao Lingyu again. Xiao Lingyu occupied a mountain top and continuously attacked. However, each time, he only injured and forced back the snow demons that rushed towards him. He did not directly kill them. It was not that Xiao Lingyu was soft-hearted. Firstly, there was no need to kill them. Secondly, he deliberately injured these snow demons so that they could continue to call for their friends. It will be a waste of time and energy for me to find them. Why don't I just wait here for them to come find me? That's fine too. I can also find the demon head Ice Soulgrass. That was what Xiao Lingyu thought. Therefore, he only beat the snow demons that rushed towards him until they lost the ability to fight. This way, they would be able to escape but would not be able to charge again. This way, he could ensure that the snow demons that rushed towards him would be different each time. The number of snow demons here was definitely more than the number of bat demons in the 10,000 bat cave. Xiao Lingyu naturally would not persist. If he encountered a very powerful snow demon, or if he felt that he was too tired, he would hide in the spiritual abode for a period of time before coming out. Such a miraculous existence like the spiritual abode would naturally attract many snow demons. Xiao Lingyu would also not stay in the same place for too long. Occasionally, he would use the spiritual abode to quickly change his position and continue to create a bigger commotion to attract the snow demons. This was a shortcut to finding the demon head Ice Soulgrass. However, this did not guarantee that he would be able to achieve his goal. Xiao Lingyu was only doing his best. In this way, it took another 200 years for Xiao Lingyu to finally find the demon head Ice Soulgrass. His plan did not go to waste. It was a snow ferret. It looked very cute and was about the size of an ordinary kitten. However, it had a pair of black eyes that made it look very smart. Snow ferrets had hair on their heads, but it was usually very short. However, this snow ferret that Xiaoling Yu had locked onto was different. The hair on its head was about half a foot long. This was also why Xiaoling Yu had discovered it so quickly. Now that his target had appeared, Xiaoling Yu, who could not wait any longer, naturally did not dawdle any longer. He immediately pounced towards the snow ferret. However, the snow ferret was very agile. Its ability to sense danger was very strong. As soon as Xiaoling Yu moved, its body turned into a white light and dodged. Xiaoling Yu actually missed. Xiaoling Yu's explosive speed in short distances was definitely not slower than an ordinary early-stage Immortal Emperor. However, this snow ferret was actually able to dodge his attack. This made him very surprised. He secretly thought that this snow ferret was indeed not an ordinary creature. Xiaoling Yu immediately continued to give chase. However, the snow ferret was able to dodge every time. Even if Xiaoling Yu moved first, the results would still be the same. After a few flashes, Xiaoling Yu and the snow ferret were far away from the place where countless snow demons were gathered. That snow ferret was very intelligent. Every time it dodged Xiaoling Yu's attack, it would make a very human-like face. This made Xiaoling Yu angry and amused at the same time. However, there was nothing he could do. From the aura that this snow ferret was emitting, one could tell that its cultivation was not weak. However, it was definitely not an Immortal Emperor. However, its speed was much faster than an ordinary early-stage Immortal Emperor. Xiaoling Yu found it very difficult to capture it. However, he did not dare to use his ultimate attack for fear of destroying the demon head Ice Soul Grass. However, continuing to chase like this was not a solution. Furthermore, this snow ferret was obviously playing with him. Otherwise, with its speed, it should have been able to easily shake Xiaoling Yu off. After chasing for a while, Xiaoling Yu had a thought and activated the invisibility cloak's invisibility effect. That snow ferret was originally making a face at Xiaoling Yu. However, when Xiaoling Yu suddenly disappeared, it was obviously stunned. Then in the next moment, it reflexively flashed its body and left the place. After flashing a few times, the snow ferret saw that the human cultivator it had been playing with for a long time still had not appeared. It could not help but stretch out a front paw and scratch its head. It looked very confused. Xiaoling Yu hid in the shadows and slowly approached the snow ferret. After all, that snow ferret did not have the soul of an immortal supremacy. Therefore, it was unable to sense Xiaoling Yu's approach. When Xiaoling Yu suddenly appeared in front of it and attacked, it sensed danger. However, it was already too late to dodge and escape. It was caught by Xiaoling Yu's hand. At this moment, Xiaoling Yu revealed himself and said proudly, "Little fellow, let's see where you can run to now." Chapter 412. Firstly, the little ferret was indeed mysterious and lovable. And secondly, Xiaoling Yu didn't know how to collect the demon head eye soul grass. So after thinking for a moment, he didn't act recklessly and instead brought the little ferret into his divine dwelling before heading towards the wondrous Pill Sect's encampment. The valley where the miraculous Pill Sect was stationed was still as quiet as ever. In a rather spacious pavilion, Qing Xian was lying on a wooden bed with an ice-cold body. Her beautiful face, which was wrapped in ice crystals, had a rosy glow to it. It was obvious that the injuries on her body had recovered very well. "Old Mao, how do we get this demon head ice soul grass?" Xiaoling Yu asked Mao Zhen after imprisoning the little ferret's body. "It's very simple. Just kill this little thing and turn its body into ashes, leaving only the demon head ice soul grass," Mao Zhen replied indifferently. When Xiaoling Yu heard this, he couldn't help but frown, thinking that this old man really wasn't a good person. His heart was actually so vicious, but he still tried his best to ask politely, "Is there a way to take the demon head ice soul grass without killing it?" "There is, but it's very troublesome. There's not much time left, so there's no need to waste time on this. Mao Zhan said indifferently. Tell me what the method is first, Xiaoling Yu insisted. He felt that this little ferret was not only cute, but also very mysterious. At the very least, it had a strong advantage in sensing danger and speed over short distances. If he could keep it by his side, it would be a great help. Accelerate the ripening of the demon head ice soul grass and make it leave this little thing's body, Mao Zhan replied. How do you accelerate its ripening? How long will it take? Xiaoling Yu asked again. To accelerate the ripening of such a divine great existence, you need a drop of life essence milk, and you'll have to wait for more than 100 years, Mao Zhan replied. When Xiaoling Yu heard this, his frown naturally deepened. I do have a few drops of life essence milk, but this kind of existence can even accelerate the ripening of a divine great existence. For alchemy masters like us who regard high-grade herbs as our lives, it's even more precious than a divine great existence. You probably won't be willing to buy a drop. Moreover, can you wait for another 100 years? Mao Zhan added with a smile. How many divine stones does a drop of life essence milk cost? Name a price. Before Xiaoling Yu could answer, Elder Peng had already spoken. Elder Peng spoke up because he saw that Xiaoling Yu liked the little ferret. Secondly, he felt that the little ferret was worth keeping. Thirdly, he felt very uncomfortable when he saw Mao Zhan's posture. Elder Peng, can we wait another 100 years? Xiaoling Yu asked. Why can't we wait? Now, the materials are all ready. However, it will take him many years to process these materials. Moreover, the demon head eye-soul grass's medicinal efficacy will definitely be much stronger when it matures. Waiting for 100 years is worth it. Elder Peng nodded and explained. Alchemy Peng, the demon head ice-soul grass. Even if there's a delay, there's no delay to the demon head ice will to refine in it. And there is twos that has have to wait, wait, and wait. While eyes you uses then we'll have to trouble Elder Peng again, Xiaoling Yu said with a bitter smile. Mao Zhan extorted another 10,000 low-grade divine stones for a drop of life essence milk. Fortunately, Elder Peng was also a great master and had accumulated a lot of wealth. Otherwise, only a few immortal venerables would be able to take out so many divine stones. After receiving Elder Peng's divine stones, Mao Zhan took out a small jade bottle. There were a few drops of milky white liquid floating in the bottle. That liquid was the life essence milk. Mao Zhan opened the jade bottle and took out a drop of life essence milk, dripping it directly on the little ferret's head. Immediately, the little ferret's body shook, and then it was tightly wrapped in a milky white light. It slowly closed its eyes and fell into a deep sleep. You guys wait here. I'll go process the ingredients. After Mao Zhan said this, he left with his disciples. It seemed like he did not want to process the ingredients in front of everyone. When Xiaoling Yu was fighting with the toads, he had suffered heavy injuries. Now that he had nothing to do, and he had to wait for more than 100 years, he could take advantage of this time to recuperate. Before 100 years had passed, Mao Zhan had already processed all the other ingredients. He was only waiting for the demon head ice soul grass to mature. Xiaoling Yu's body also gradually recovered to its peak state. Finally, after waiting for more than 120 years, the milky white light on the little ferret's body gradually disappeared. After waiting for another 10 years, the little ferret slowly opened its hazy eyes. Just as it stretched its waist, the demon head ice soul grass on its head automatically fell off with its roots. After the demon head ice soul grass matured, it naturally left the little ferret's body. It did not have much effect on the little ferret. Moreover, the drop of life essence milk was not completely used on the demon head ice soul grass. It was also very helpful to the little ferret. After waking up from 100 years of slumber, the little ferret, which was originally very close to the Immortal Emperor stage, directly advanced to the early Immortal Emperor stage. As soon as the demon head ice soul grass fell off, it was sealed by Mao Zhan and taken away. Xiaoling Yu said to the little ferret, "In order to save your life, I've put in a lot of effort. Don't dawdle and quickly recognize me as your master. The little ferret was a very smart, demonic beast. Although it really did not want to recognize anyone as its master and be restricted for life, the current situation was very obvious. It knew that it had no choice. If it resisted, it would only die. Therefore, it obediently nodded and allowed Xiao Yu to inject a drop of blood soul into its soul. Since the little ferret had already recognized its master, Xiao Yu naturally did not need to imprison it anymore. As soon as it regained its freedom, it jumped to Qing Xian's side. Because Qing Xian's side was very cold, and the little ferret liked the cold environment, Xiao Yu did not carry it away. He only reminded it not to move around recklessly. After waiting for more than a year, Mao Zhan sent his disciple over to say that he was ready to start refining the divine pill. Brother Xiao, stay here and take care of Qing Xian. I'll go over and watch that old thing refine the pill. After saying this, Elder Peng left with Mao Zhan's disciple. Xiao Yu did not understand much about the Tao of alchemy. Even if he went to watch, he would not be able to see anything. Therefore, he stayed by Qing Xian's side with peace of mind. A few days later, Xiao Yu suddenly felt a thin and heavy pressure pressing down from the sky. When he went outside to look at the sky, his expression changed drastically. This was because there were dark clouds gathering in the sky above the valley and forming a huge vortex. There was even the sound of thunder rumbling from within. Dark clouds gathering in the sky was not an unusual sight. However, the dark clouds quickly formed a vortex, and a terrifying pressure came from within. This was not an ordinary sight. When he saw that there was a circle of yin and yang fish in the middle of the vortex, he could not help but exclaim, "It's a tribulation cloud." That's right, it's a tribulation cloud. The divine pills, or divine tools refined in the immortal world, all need to be baptized by the heavenly tribulation. This is the divine pill tribulation. Only after passing the divine pill tribulation will the divine pill be qualified to exist in this world. Elder Peng had returned at some point and was standing beside Xiao Yu as he explained. What if it can't pass the tribulation? Wouldn't this divine pill be refined for nothing? Xiao Yu asked nervously. Yes. Elder Peng nodded and comforted him. Generally speaking, the divine pills or divine tools refined by the alchemists will be able to pass the heavenly tribulation. After all, this kind of heavenly tribulation is much weaker than the divine tribulation that cultivators have to go through to ascend to the immortal world. At this moment, a fist-sized bead that was shining with a cold, white light flew into the air and was under the terrifying heavenly pressure. It was obvious that the white bead was a divine pill that had just been refined. However, it needed to be sucked in by the heavenly tribulation before it could successfully form into a true divine pill. I have refined the divine pill. The rest depends on your luck. At this moment, Mao Zhan also came to the side and said with a pale face. It seemed that refining this divine pill had consumed a lot of Mao Zhan's energy. Brother Xiao, don't worry. More than 80% of the divine pills refined by the alchemists of the wonderful pill sect can pass the divine pill tribulation. Elder Peng was not very nervous. Peng Ba is right. However, if you encounter the 20% failure rate, you can only blame it on your bad luck. It's not that I didn't try my best. When I was refining the divine pill, Peng Ba was watching at the scene. Mao Zhan said with a smile. There was nothing wrong with saying the ugly words in advance. However, before the divine pill tribulation began, Mao Zhan had already begun to shirk his responsibility. This made Xiao Yu feel very uneasy. After all, Mao Zhan was forced to come out of seclusion by him and was unwilling to refine this divine pill. It was hard to guarantee that Mao Zhan did not have any ill intentions. Brother Xiao, don't be reckless later. This divine pill tribulation is the same as the tribulation of cultivators. Outsiders cannot help. Otherwise, not only will the power of the heavenly tribulation double, but the person who helps will also be targeted by the heavenly tribulation. Elder Peng seemed to be worried as he transmitted his voice to Xiao Yu. This was because he knew that Xiaoling Yu would not allow this divine pill to be destroyed by the heavenly tribulation. Elder Punk, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Although Xiaoling Yu replied in such a way, he had already made up his mind to protect this divine pill no matter what. Boom! After the divine pill tribulation cloud had been brewing for a long time, a silver thunderbolt was sent down. Xiaoling Yu could feel that the power of this silver thunderbolt was comparable to the full force attack of a supreme celestial artifact. The silver thunderbolt blasted on the divine pill, causing it to be instantly wrapped in silver electric current. Its body trembled violently and shrunk at the same time. The silver electric arc disappeared. The divine pill was not destroyed, but its body had shrunk to the size of an ordinary egg. It looked more solid. Boom! Not long after, another golden thunderbolt struck down from the sky. Its power was a little more powerful than a quasi-divine artifact, but could not be compared to a real low-grade divine artifact. This strike also landed accurately on the divine pill. Circles of golden electric arc wrapped around the divine pill. Xiaoling Yu was extremely nervous. After the golden electric arc disappeared, the divine pill continued to tremble in midair. This time, it did not immediately shrink again. Instead, it showed signs of expanding. Chapter 4:13. Xiaoling Yu had a bad premonition when he heard Elder Peng's exclamation. However, the divine pill slowly shrank after expanding for a while. Finally, it was the size of a date and stabilized. It almost couldn't withstand the second tribulation lightning. I'm afraid it won't be able to withstand the third tribulation lightning. Maojin shook his head and sighed, looking very regretful. Elder Peng didn't say anything, but his expression was very gloomy. Like Xiaoling Yu, he hoped that the divine pill could withstand the tribulation lightning. From Elder Peng's expression, it was clear that he also felt that the divine pill couldn't be saved. Xiaoling Yu couldn't help but look coldly at Mao Zhan. More than 80% of the divine pills refined by the wondrous pill sect could survive the divine pill tribulation, but this time, it was actually going to fail. Moreover, it was already like this under the second tribulation lightning. Xiaoling Yu had reason to suspect that Mao Zhan was doing this on purpose. Don't look at me like that. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame your bad luck. The probability of failure is less than 20%. Sensing Xiaoling Yu's unfriendly gaze, Mao Zhan shook his head and said, Xiaoling Yu knew that it was useless to argue with Mao Zhan now. The most important thing was to protect the divine pill. Looking at the tribulation clouds in the sky that were still increasing in power, then looking at Qing Xian who was lying on the wooden bed behind him, Xiaoling Yu gritted his teeth, leaped up, and flew to the divine pill. Brother Xiao, you can't. Elder Peng called out. He had placed all his hopes on Xiaoling Yu, so naturally, he didn't want Xiaoling Yu to risk his life. Moreover, he also felt that even if Xiaoling Yu made a move, he might not be able to protect the divine pill. Moreover, it was very likely that he would make a meaningless sacrifice. However, Xiaoling Yu couldn't care less. He had been busy for a long time, expended a lot of energy, and even took a great risk for this divine pill. Even if it wasn't for Qing Xian, he didn't want this divine pill to go up in smoke. This divine pill would definitely not be able to withstand the last bolt of tribulation lightning. If it were to take action when the tribulation lightning struck, it would definitely be too late. Therefore, Xiaoling Yu took the opportunity to fly up before the last bolt of tribulation lightning struck. Xiaoling Yu had just flown into the air when she was locked onto by a powerful aura. The tribulation lightning that was about to descend began to brew again. What a pity! Mao Zhan looked at the sky, shook his head, and sighed. What's a pity? Your divine pill? Elder Peng asked with a gloomy face. What a pity for the divine pill. What a pity for such a talented young man, Mao Zhan replied. Don't pity the divine pill. If you didn't do it on purpose, how could the divine pill be so weak? Elder Peng said coldly, You can't say that. When I was refining the divine pill, you were also present. If I didn't do my best, Would you have agreed at that time? Mao Zhan said with a very reasonable expression. Although I have also studied the Tao of alchemy, I am not proficient in it. If you, a dignified alchemy grandmaster, were to play some tricks, how could I see through it? Elder Peng snorted coldly. Don't measure the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain, Mao Zhan replied. If you can be considered a gentleman, then there are no villains in the immortal world. Elder Peng did not hide his sarcasm. I know you're mocking me because you're worried about those divine stones. I won't bicker with you. Mao Zhan looked very magnanimous. Elder Peng was so angry that his body trembled. He did not know what to say to this old scoundrel. After all, there was no evidence to check whether the other party had really done something when refining the divine pill. This tribulation lightning is even more powerful than the divine lightning that ordinary immortal supremes face during their divine tribulation. He most likely won't be able to withstand it. What a pity. Mao Zhan opened his mouth again, as if he wanted to infuriate Elder Peng to death. That may not be the case. Elder Peng was not convinced. Boom! Just as the two martial grandmasters were discussing, a five-color divine lightning fell from the sky and blasted straight at Shaolin Yu's head. Before the divine lightning could hit him, Shaolin Yu had already activated his spiritual abode and used it to shield his head. Then, a purplish-black flame turned into a fire dragon and rushed into the sky. Then, more than 1,000 armored puppets appeared around Shaolin Yu in an instant and shot a five-color divine light into the sky at the same time. Boom! 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 The five-color divine lightning was extremely powerful. First, it blasted the spiritual abode away, then dispersed the purplish-black fire dragon. Finally, it withstood the bombardment of more than 1,000 divine lights and landed on Shaolin Yu's body. Whether it was the spiritual abode, the chaotic primordial flame, or the 1,000 divine lights, they were all extraordinary existences. Although they could not completely block the five-color divine lightning, they had reduced more than half of its power. At this moment, Shaolin Yu was wearing the invisible divine robe, which could also weaken the divine lightning's power. Therefore, Shaolin Yu only suffered less than 30% of the five-color divine lightning's power. Even so, Shaolin Yu was instantly blasted into the ground. His body and the divine lightning created a bottomless pit in the ground. Shaolin Yu took the bombardment of the five-color divine lightning head-on. Naturally, the divine elixir was saved. The tribulation clouds in the sky gradually dispersed. An array of light enveloped the divine elixir. This kid has so many powerful techniques. No wonder he dares to be so arrogant in the wonderful pill sect. However, to save the divine elixir, I'm afraid he'll have to leave his life behind. As Mao Zhan thought this, the corner of his mouth revealed an undetectable sinister smile. He thought again, even the celestial sovereign has to be polite when he sees me. Who do you think you are to threaten me? You really don't know the difference between life and death. Elder Peng did not look at the divine elixir in the sky, nor did he think much of it. Instead, he looked directly at the wooden bed behind him. When he saw that the little ferret lying next to the Qing Xian on the wooden bed was still alive and well, Elder Peng let out a long sigh and said, I told you, that might not be the case. If Shaolin Yu had been killed by the five-color divine lightning, then the little ferret, who had recognized Shaolin Yu as its master, would have been destroyed as well. Since the little ferret was fine, it proved that Shaolin Yu was at least still alive. When Mao Zhan heard Elder Peng's words, he also looked behind him. When he saw that the little ferret was safe and sound, he immediately frowned. Your expression betrayed you, Elder Peng said with a cold smile. Mao Zhan did not respond. Instead, he flew directly toward the big pit that Shaolin Yu had created. Elder Peng immediately followed him, only to see Mao Zhan throw a golden ball into the big pit. Boom! Elder Peng had just caught up when a golden light flashed in front of his eyes. Then, an earth-shattering explosion sounded. He was caught off guard and was directly blown far away. As for the little ferret in the pavilion, it was the first to sense the danger. Before the explosion occurred, it hugged Qing Xian's ice-cold body and ran far away. After throwing the golden ball, Mao Zhan jumped up and put the divine elixir into a jade box. The other cultivators of the wonderful pill sect surrounded him and stared coldly at Elder Peng. Elder Peng spat out a few mouthfuls of blood from the explosion. After he steadied himself, he pointed at Mao Zhan and said, "How dare you do this? Oomph. You dare to attack the wonderful pill sect and capture my disciple to threaten me. Why wouldn't I dare to do the same? Do you think that the wonderful pill sect can be bullied so easily?" Mao Zhan said with a righteous tone. Elder Peng's face was full of resentment, but he was already injured. Moreover, the other party had the advantage in numbers. What could he do? However, in the next moment, Elder Peng seemed to have thought of something. He looked behind him, but he did not see Qing Xian and the ferret. After looking around again, Elder Peng finally saw the little ferret. He could not help but laugh loudly. "Huh, old bastard, you'll regret your foolish actions," Elder Peng said with a smile. Mao Zhan also saw that the little ferret was still unharmed. He frowned again and cursed. This kid is really tough. He's still alive. As he spoke, another golden ball appeared in Mao Zhan's hand. He threw it at the big pit. "I'm really tough." Before the golden ball exploded, a voice full of hatred suddenly sounded in Mao Zhan's ears. Mao Zhan was shocked. A ball of purple-black flames had already wrapped around his body. "Stop, you brat!" Boom! Mao Zhan's white-haired junior brother had just shouted when another explosion came from the big pit below. Mao Zhan's junior brother struck out with his palm. Shaolin Yu transformed one of his arms into a dragon claw and met the attack head-on. When the two palms collided, Mao Zhan's junior brother was sent flying. Shaolin Yu only took a few steps back, but he coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood. Then, under the control of Shaolin Yu's will, more than 1,000 puppets quickly reacted and surrounded the area. Elder Peng also flew over at this time, his face full of surprise and joy. As an alchemy grandmaster, Mao Zhan also possessed a divine fire. At this time, a ring of green divine fire flickered around his body, resisting the purple-black chaos true fire's burning. For a moment, he did not look worried. "I fulfilled all your conditions," Shaolin Yu said angrily. "Even if I force my way into the wondrous pill sect, and even if I did kidnap your disciple to threaten you, you're still a grandmaster respected by millions of cultivators in the immortal world. How could you be so vicious?" Surrounded by countless armored cultivators, Shaolin Yu looked completely unaffected. Add to that the fact that Elder Peng was present. The other cultivators of the wondrous pill sect didn't dare to make a move. "I don't think you'll be grateful to me after I helped you refine a divine pill. When you gave me those things, you probably wanted me to pay you back double in the future, right?" Mao Zhan said as he resisted with all his might. "To tell you the truth, your guess is correct. I did have such thoughts. Unfortunately, if you hadn't been so vicious, I might have let you go," Shaolin Yu said. "There's a saying in the mortal world, the one who strikes first gains the upper hand, the one who strikes later loses. Just now was the best time for me to kill you. I won't give up so easily. If I had to choose again, I would still do the same," Mao Zhan said shamelessly. "Unfortunately, you underestimate me too much. When I was struck down by the divine lightning just now, my body didn't actually suffer that much damage," Shaolin Yu said with a smile. "It's not that I underestimated you, but that I thought highly of you. However, your strength still exceeded my expectations. I also didn't expect your divine clothes to be invisible." Mao Zhan replied with a wry smile, then said, "Can you leave behind a legacy for our wondrous pill sect?" "Huh." Chapter 414. "You're asking me to leave trouble for myself in the future," Shaolin Yu said nonchalantly. If Shaolin Yu hadn't used the invisibility divine robe to conceal himself, launched a sneak attack, and enveloped Mao Zhan with the primal chaos primordial fire, Shaolin Yu wouldn't have been able to subdue Mao Zhan so easily even with Elder Peng's help. However, Mao Zhan was currently enveloped by the primal chaos primordial fire and couldn't escape at all. He could only use his own green divine fire to defend himself. However, the green divine fire was slightly weaker than Elder Pang's blue divine fire. How could it resist the purplish-black, primal chaos, primordial fire for long? In less than 100 breaths, the defensive barrier formed by Mao Zhan's green divine fire had weakened slightly before gradually shrinking. The purplish-black primal chaos, primordial fire gradually approached Mao Zhan's body. The knell of death had already rung in Mao Zhan's ears. Why don't we make him swear an oath that he'll never be our enemy again and let him go this time? Elder Peng suggested. Is that necessary? Xiao Lingyu asked indifferently. He's an alchemy grandmaster after all. If Brother Xiao kills him, I'm afraid you'll incur the wrath of those venerables, Elder Peng said calmly. I don't care about the wrath of those venerables. I only know that he tried to kill me just now. I'll never let such a person go, Xiao Lingyu said firmly and confidently as he shook his head. Elder Peng was about to persuade him again when the purplish-black primal chaos, primordial fire burned Mao Zhan's body. At that moment, Xiao Lingyu reached into the primal chaos, primordial fire and removed Mao Zhan's storage ring as his body slowly melted. In just a few breaths, Mao Zhan's body turned into ashes, leaving only a ball of green divine fire. Elder Peng, you can deal with this ball of divine fire. After retrieving his primal chaos, primordial fire, Xiao Lingyu flew to Qing Xian's side. At the same time, he commanded the thousands of armored puppets to surround and kill the cultivators of the Wondrous Pill sect. However, as soon as the puppets shone with divine light, Xiao Lingyu stopped them and said, "Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Now that Mao Zhan, who tried to kill me, is dead, if you can swear an oath with your souls that you won't avenge him or become my enemy in the future, I'll spare your lives." I'm willing to swear. Mao Zhan's disciple, who was an early-stage divine immortal, of course, of heaven. Xiao Lingyu smiled at Mao Zhan's disciple. He didn't need to worry about such a cowardly person. Then he said, "Hand over my scimitar." Mao Zhan's disciple didn't hesitate and obediently handed over the scimitar that was as thin as a cicada's wing to Xiao Lingyu. It wasn't easy to cultivate to the early-stage divine immortal realm. Moreover, he had received the true teachings of an alchemy grandmaster. A bright future awaited him. He didn't want to lose his life because of a moment of loyalty. What about the rest of you? Xiao Lingyu looked at the other disciples of the Wondrous Pill sect. Compared to the cultivators of the devil world, immortals were more content with life and didn't like fighting. They treasured their lives even more. After some thought, the other disciples of the Wondrous Pill sect looked at Mao Zhan's white-haired junior brother. After he sighed and took the lead in swearing an oath, the other disciples of the Wondrous Pill sect followed suit. Xiao Lingyu waved his hand and said, "You're all free now. In the future, don't let me see any of you in the immortal world." Without an alchemy grandmaster, the Wondrous Pill sect naturally couldn't continue to control the Piaoshan continent. Although the disciples of the Wondrous Pill sect had deep feelings for the Piaoshan continent, they had no choice but to leave. Even if Xiao Lingyu didn't chase them away now, other experts from the immortal world would come in the future. After all the disciples of the Wondrous Pill sect left, Xiao Lingyu put away the puppets, divine palaces, and scimitar. Then, he took out a jade box from Mao Zhan's storage ring. Xiao Lingyu opened the jade box, revealing a white divine pill that was suffused with a cold mist. A knowing smile appeared on his face. He used the primal chaos true fire to melt the ice crystals on Qing Xian's body and helped her sit up straight. Then, he fed the divine pill in her mouth. When the divine pill was first refined, its quality was extremely high. It could even withstand the bombardment of divine lightning. However, after transcending the tribulation and being enveloped by the light of the heavenly tribulation for a period of time, it would melt in her mouth, and its medicinal efficacy would automatically spread. This divine pill's main effect was on the soul, so its medicinal efficacy directly invaded Qing Xian's knowledge sea. Qing Xian's soul was nourished, and she quickly woke up. Then, she heard Xiao Lingyu's reminder, quickly circulate your cultivation and absorb the divine pill's medicinal efficacy. Although Qing Xian didn't understand what was going on, she still acted rationally and gradually entered a state of cultivation. Puff, puff. After Qing Xian's condition stabilized and improved, Xiaoling Yu finally relaxed. However, he coughed up several mouthfuls of foul blood again. When he was talking to Mao Zhen just now, Xiaoling Yu appeared very relaxed. In fact, his body that had just recovered suffered heavy injuries under the bombardment of the five-color divine lightning. Fortunately, his body and bloodline were very strong, so he was able to persevere. When he was just blasted into the ground, he activated the invisibility divine robe's invisibility function and left the huge pit without stopping for a moment. When Mao Zhan saw that the little ferret was safe and sound, he threw a golden pearl into the huge pit. However, Xiaoling Yu had already left the pit and was hiding nearby to see if Mao Zhan would take advantage of the situation. Xiaoling Yu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. When he saw that Elder Peng was concentrating on refining the green divine fire, Xiaoling Yu felt at ease and took out the jade bathtub. Elder Peng had also contributed a lot this time. At the very least, he had taken out many divine stones to help. Moreover, Elder Peng had previously given up his blue divine fire. It was only natural that Xiaoling Yu handed Elder Peng the green divine fire. Moreover, the green divine fire wasn't very useful to Xiaoling Yu. After all, he already had the purplish-black primordial flame of chaos. Moreover, he didn't want to go to the fire source continent to borrow the sacrificial flame altar to merge the green divine fire with the primordial flame of chaos. Qing Xian's experience had made him very wary of the sacrificial flame altar. Even if he borrowed the sacrificial flame altar and successfully merged the primordial flame of chaos with the green divine fire, Xiaoling Yu wouldn't be able to use his bloodline to suppress the power of the primordial flame of chaos. He also wouldn't be able to control the new primordial flame of chaos. With the help of the powerful medicinal effects of the divine pill, Qing Xian only used a dozen or so days to completely recover. When she stopped cultivating, Xiaoling Yu was still in the bathtub. Whoosh! Qing Xian had just stood up when a beam of white light shot towards her from nearby. She didn't know if it was because she had just recovered and wasn't used to it, or because the white light was too fast, but she actually wasn't able to dodge it. Fortunately, the white light was not an attack. It was a cute and clever little ferret that had transformed into it. The little ferret was very fond of the icy aura on Qing Xian's body. After it pounced into Qing Xian's arms, it even intimately rubbed against her. After a moment of surprise, Qing Xian's beautiful face immediately bloomed with a smile. She said gently, "What a miraculous little thing." After that, Qing Xian hugged the little ferret. She first glanced at the bathtub, then flew to Elder Peng's side. She said, "He seems to be heavily injured." Elder Peng continued to refine the green divine fire as he recounted what happened after Qing Xian had fainted on the sacrificial flame altar. Naturally, he deliberately exaggerated how worried Xiaoling Yu was about Qing Xian's safety. He also exaggerated the risk Xiaoling Yu had taken to save Qing Xian. Elder Peng had cultivated for countless years and experienced many things. Naturally, he could see Qing Xian's feelings. He also felt that Qing Xian and Xiaoling Yu were indeed very compatible. Therefore, he wanted to play matchmaker. As Elder Peng narrated, the happiness on Qing Xian's face grew even stronger. She asked like a little girl, "Really?" Elder Peng naturally answered with certainty. Everything he said was true, although he didn't know Xiaoling Yu's feelings and didn't know how much danger Xiaoling Yu had taken. He's just too reckless. He actually killed Great Grandmaster Mao. Although Qing Xian's words were reproachful, there was a hint of pride in her approach. "Sister Qing Xian, such a good son-in-law. You have to hurry up. Don't let other girls beat you to it." Elder Peng reminded her with a smile. When Qing Xian heard this, her face, which was originally filled with happiness, immediately changed color. She sighed and said, "Someone has already beaten me to it." The smile on Elder Peng's old face immediately froze. He said in astonishment, "It can't be." Qing Xian was speechless. The sadness on her face was obvious. Elder Peng thought for a moment and said, "Actually, Brother Xiao is a demonic cultivator. He cultivates demonic techniques. Sister Qing Xian, on the other hand, is an immortal cultivator. You cultivate immortal energy. Two completely different cultivation systems can't be combined." Qing Xian's expression became even more conflicted. She didn't know what to say at that moment. She quietly descended and turned her back to Shaolin Yu's bathtub. She gazed into the distance and gently stroked the little ferret's soft fur. After all, Elder Peng possessed the divine fire in the past, so he had ample experience in refining the divine fire. Therefore, it took him less than 2 years to refine a portion of the divine fire. He was already able to control the green divine fire at will. Shaolin Yu, on the other hand, only stood up from the bathtub a few years later. In fact, the medicinal soup in the bathtub was already clear, but it was rare for him to relax, so he slept in the bathtub for a while. The sound of splashing water pulled Qing Xian out of her thoughts. She immediately turned around and saw Shaolin Yu's naked body. She immediately spat, and her face flushed red. Elder Peng flew to Shaolin Yu's side and reminded him, "It won't be long before the news of the miraculous Pill School's destruction spreads in the immortal world. This place will soon become a place of trouble. It's better for us to leave quickly." Shaolin Yu nodded and then looked at the little ferret. However, the little ferret ignored him. Shaolin Yu laughed bitterly and said, "Since you don't like me, I won't force you. I'll remove you as my master now." He waved his arm at the little ferret. The blood soul that Shaolin Yu injected into the little ferret's soul automatically flew out and dispersed. Chapter 415. After regaining its freedom, the little ferret was naturally very happy. After all, no one wanted to be controlled by others, and no one wanted to die because of their master's death. However, the little ferret did not leave according to Shaolin Yu's words. Instead, it was still lazily lying in Qing Xian's arms, looking very sentimental. "Little fellow, you will follow Big Sister from now on. I will definitely not bully you, and I will not allow anyone to bully you," Qing Xian said dotingly. When the little ferret heard this, it seemed to understand Qing Xian's meaning. It actually waved its little fist at Shaolin Yu with a fierce look, as if to say, "You dare to bully me in the future." Shaolin Yu, Elder Peng, and Qing Xian were all amused by the little ferret's mischievous look. Then, the three of them packed up everything and flew towards the teleportation array of the Piaoshan continent. While continuously teleporting to the East Imperial continent, Shaolin Yu continued to blood bond with the armored puppet and his divine artifact. Although this trip to the Piaoshan continent was a long one, and he had suffered a lot, the rewards were still quite good. Not to mention Qing Xian's divine elixir. Just the treasures in Mao Zhen's storage ring were enough to make even an immortal supremacy jealous. As an alchemy grandmaster, Mao Zhen's storage ring contained close to 100,000 low-grade divine stones, dozens of divine elixirs with different effects, 2 divine artifacts of decent quality, and thousands of high-grade herbs. Even the Bodhi King that Shaolin Yu took a risk to obtain from the 10,000-bat cave was in the ring. Even though they did not have to wait in line to teleport from the Piaoshan continent to the East Imperial continent, it still took a full 800 years to complete the journey. Elder Peng did not follow them all the way to the East Imperial continent. Instead, he parted ways with Shaolin Yu and Qing Xian halfway, saying that he was going back to take a look. After Shaolin Yu returned to the Nanhua Immortal School, they had a period of peaceful days. However, not long after, Shaolin Yu, who was meditating on the second floor of his pavilion, suddenly sensed a strange movement in his storage ring. He sank his consciousness into it and was overjoyed. The soul jade pendant that Zhongji had given to Shaolin Yu had shattered in Shaolin Yu's storage ring. This was the signal that the Bao Inquire organization had completed their mission. In other words, the detective organization had found Anya. Xiao Yu could not suppress the excitement in her heart. She immediately got up and left the loft. He rushed to the East Imperial City as fast as he could, and then went straight to that unremarkable shop. Haha, Brother Zhao's speed is really fast. Zhongji was still sitting on a chair on the second floor. When he saw Xiao Yu, he stood up and smiled. You're more efficient when you're around, Xiao Yu praised with a smile. The key is that we value this mission. Naturally, we completed it quickly. If it was someone else who issued the same mission, it would probably take at least tens of thousands of years to find her, Zhongji said meaningfully. Thank you, Brother Zhong. Xiao Yu thanked him sincerely. Brother Xiao, you're too polite. We're family, after all. Your matter is the matter of the Bao Inquire organization and all the descendants of Earth. Zhongji shook his head and said, Where's the person I'm looking for? Xiao Yu did not continue with the pleasantries and asked directly. Brother Xiao, don't worry. She's doing very well now. Furthermore, we have experts protecting her in the dark. Zhongji first comforted her and then said, The immortal world continent she's in now is a little far from the East Imperial continent. Even if she doesn't have to line up and teleport all the way there, it will take at least 2,000 years to arrive. Thank you for your concern, Brother Zhong. Xiao Yu still had a grateful expression. If Brother Xiao has something to do and has no time to go over, we can send someone to escort her all the way here, Zhongji continued. I'll go over myself. I don't dare to trouble Brother Zhong. Xiao Yu shook his head and said. Zhongji nodded. After pondering for a moment, he said, Brother Xiao, you should consider Elder Qi's suggestion last time. Although we descendants of Earth don't dare to openly announce our identity in the immortal world, it doesn't mean that we're weak. The strength we have is definitely enough to destroy any top aristocratic family in the immortal world. Xiao Yu responded, I'm not a qualified leader, but I'll say it again. If there's anything you need me for, I won't refuse. Anya was so far away from the East Imperial continent, but the Bao Inquire organization could find her so quickly. From this, it could be seen how powerful the descendants of Earth were. Zhong, she didn't try to persuade him anymore. He immediately told Xiao Yu Anya's current location. Xiao Yu also thought that the Bao Inquire organization would use Anya to threaten him. But now, it seemed that they didn't have such plans. He was relieved. After obtaining Anya's exact location, Xiao Yu didn't dawdle anymore. First, he returned to the Nanhua Immortal Sect, asked Qing Pingzi for a token, and said that he would be leaving for a period of time. Then, he left the East Imperial continent. 2 years after Xiao Yu left, Qing Xian only found out that Xiao Yu had left. There was a lot of resentment in his heart. Just like before, he kept teleporting while refining all his divine artifacts with the primal chaos true fire. Not only was the journey peaceful, but his overall strength was also increasing as the refinement of each divine artifact deepened. Just as Zhongji said, Xiao Yu used a total of 2,200 years to teleport to the Immortal Realm continent, where Anya was located. 2,000 years of teleportation without waiting in line. It was hard for Xiao Yu to calculate how far he could cross. He also couldn't count the number of Immortal Realm continents he had passed through. The entire space of the Immortal Realm could only be described as boundless. This continent was called the 10,000 Flower Continent. It was one of the most famous continents in the Immortal Realm. The reason why the 10,000 Flower Continent was famous was because of the colorful flowers and plants that could be seen everywhere. The scenery was extremely beautiful. For the more leisurely immortals who had always lived a comfortable life, this was undoubtedly one of the best places to live for a long time. It was said that in ancient times, the flower people lived on the 10,000 Flower Continent. However, after the realms were separated, the flower people's experts went to the Immortal Realm. The flower people's cultivators weren't very strong, either in terms of overall strength or individual strength. As a result, the flower people gradually disappeared in the long river of history. The 10,000 flower continent was now a prosperous continent in the immortal realm. It wasn't just because of the beautiful scenery, but also because there was a very powerful sect there, the Heaven's Incense School. The Heaven's Incense School's disciples were all female cultivators. The reason why they were said to be very strong was because there was an immortal sovereign in the Heaven's Incense School. That immortal sovereign was the famous immortal blue jade in the immortal realm. The Heaven's Incense School was different from the other top sects in the immortal realm. They didn't control a large portion of the continents in the immortal realm, nor did they set up their own businesses on the continents to plunder immortal stones. Their cultivators all cultivated peacefully on the 10,000 flower continent and didn't usually go to other continents. Only they knew where the large amount of immortal stones they needed for cultivation came from. In the hearts of all the female cultivators in the immortal realm, the Heaven's Incense School was the sect they wanted to join the most. However, it was a top sect with an immortal sovereign, so it wasn't easy for just anyone to join. The more it was like this, the more female cultivators who thought they had extraordinary talent would come every year to be tested by the Heaven's Incense School's experts to see if they had the qualifications to join. There were also many male cultivators who came, wanting to find one or more female cultivators with decent talent to become their dual cultivation partner. None of this had anything to do with Xiaoling Yu. However, when Xiaoling Yu arrived on the 10,000 flower continent, she followed Zhongji's instructions and found the secret branch of the intelligence agency in the 10,000 flower city. However, she heard some bad news. A few hundred years ago, Anya had also participated in the Heaven's Incense School's test. However, not only had Anya failed the test, she had also been forcefully detained by the Heaven's Incense School for cheating and contradicting their examiners. She hadn't been released to this day. The head of the intelligence agency on the 10,000 flower continent knew that Anya was an important person, so he sent people to negotiate with the Heaven's Incense School. However, the Heaven's Incense School claimed that they had already released Anya. However, the intelligence agency was unable to find Anya's whereabouts. Originally, we had people protecting her in secret, but when she entered the Heaven's Incense School's encampment for the test, our people couldn't follow her in. Otherwise, such an accident wouldn't have happened. The head of the investigation department helplessly explained to Xiaoling Yu. Continue searching for her. I'll go ask the Heaven's Incense School. Xiaoling Yu first left a soul imprint with the head so that they could communicate more easily. Afterwards, she left the 10,000 flower city with a gloomy expression and headed for the Heaven's Incense School station. Everywhere she passed, flowers bloomed and plants tasted delicious. However, Xiaoling Yu wasn't in the mood to appreciate the scenery at all. Her face remained ashen the entire time. After 2 whole days, Xiaoling Yu finally arrived at the entrance of the Heaven's Incense School station. The Heaven's Incense School station was built in the mountains. It covered a large area and was filled with flowers and plants. The scenery was pleasant. The entrance to the station was very grand as well. It actually used 2 large mountains as the pillars on either side, and a huge and very long piece of white jade was placed between the 2 mountains as the door beam. The words Heaven's Incense School were written on the huge piece of white jade. It was said that the cultivators of the Heaven's Incense School had not placed the huge piece of white jade between the 2 mountains. Instead, it had been like this since ancient times. The Heaven's Incense School was named after the words on the huge piece of white jade. 2 female cultivators in bright red soft armor stood guard at the entrance of the Heaven's Incense School station. They were as beautiful as flowers. As soon as Xiaoling Yu arrived at the entrance, she was stopped by the 2 female cultivators. According to the rules of the Heaven's Incense School, we do not accept male cultivators. No male cultivators are allowed to enter the Heaven's Incense School station. May I ask why you have come? One of the female cultivators in red armor asked with a hint of arrogance. I've come to look for someone. She came to the Heaven's Incense School to participate in the test before, but she never came out, Xiaoling Yu said as politely as she could. Chapter 416. She didn't pass the test. Xiao Lingyu shook his head. That's impossible. If she didn't pass the test, there's no way our Heaven's Incense School would keep her. You should look elsewhere, the female guard said with certainty. Can you find a steward to talk to? Xiao Lingyu wasn't very satisfied with the female guard's attitude. Stewards are all busy. They won't come out for such a small matter, the female guard said indifferently. The Heaven's Incense School had a celestial sovereign, so they had the capital and confidence to not fear any major powers in the celestial realm. Their disciples were naturally full of energy, especially when they were in front of their own school. Then how can the two of you be so sure that the person I'm looking for has left the Heaven's Incense School? No matter what, she went missing after entering your Heaven's Incense School. Furthermore, you've detained her. Shouldn't you send a steward to explain the situation? Xiao Lingyu asked with narrowed eyes. Detained? What a joke. Why would our Heaven's Incense School detain her? When you speak, you should consider it carefully. Don't make wild guesses. If you damage our Heaven's Incense School's reputation, we'll definitely hold you responsible for spreading rumors, the female guard said firmly. She was detained. It was the person who came with her who said it himself. Do you still want to deny it? Xiao Lingyu said with a cold smile. How can you be so sure that the person who came with her wasn't lying? The female guard asked in return. Xiao Lingyu knew that the king of hell was easy to deal with. It was pointless to say anything to these ordinary disciples who didn't know much. His patience had been completely worn away. He was also very worried about Anya's situation. He said coldly, Are you going to report this? Please return. The truth is definitely not what you think it is, the female guard said indifferently. She appeared cold. Oomph. Then I can only go in and ask for the truth myself. Xiao Lingyu was furious. He directly passed between the two guards and entered the Heaven's Incense School. You really don't know the meaning of death. The two guards didn't stop him, nor did they chase after him. One of them crushed a jade slip. The Heaven's Incense School reacted very quickly. As soon as Xiao Lingyu entered the encampment, she was surrounded by a group of female cultivators in bright red armor. Audacious thief! How dare you trespass into the Heaven's Incense School's territory? Are you seeking death? A female disciple from the Heaven's Incense School had just finished speaking when she was shocked to discover that the man they had surrounded had already charged out of their encirclement. Xiao Lingyu was extremely fast. Wherever she passed, she destroyed the buildings of the Heaven's Incense School. However, she did not harm any of the Heaven's Incense School disciples. He was here to ask for someone, not to kill. Moreover, he and the person in charge of the Baoqi branch were not sure if Anya was still being held captive by the Heaven's Incense School. Now, he was deliberately making a big commotion to force the person in charge of the Heaven's Incense School to come out and see him. In fact, Xiao Lingyu could also use his identity as a member of the Nanhua Immortal Sect to ask the person in charge of the Heaven's Incense School to come out and see him. However, if Anya was really being held captive by the Heaven's Incense School, he would most likely be unfavorable to the Heaven's Incense School. He was afraid that he would bring unnecessary trouble to the Nanhua Immortal Sect. Therefore, he had to force his way in. He was causing trouble in the Heaven's Incense School's encampment. Naturally, the experts of the Heaven's Incense School would not sit idly by. Less than 100 breaths after he rushed in, more than 10 startled Emperor-level experts came and surrounded him again. Since the Emperor-level experts had already come out, there was no need for Xiao Lingyu to cause any more trouble. He immediately explained his purpose for coming. Junior sister Mei Ling, you are in charge of selecting disciples for the sect. Do you know about this? A seemingly middle-aged female Emperor-level expert asked the person beside her. Senior sister, there is no such thing. This person must be deliberately causing trouble. The female immortal emperor called Mei Ling replied. Oomph. Your Excellency is really audacious. You will pay the price for your foolish actions today with blood. The seemingly middle-aged female Emperor-level expert said coldly. Being surrounded by so many Emperor-level experts, even though Xiao Lingyu's abilities were not weak, it was still very troublesome. When the group of female Emperor-level experts prepared to attack together, Xiao Lingyu hid himself. The target suddenly disappeared into thin air, and everyone's immortal senses also lost their target. Naturally, they were all shocked when they began to continuously vibrate the space in an attempt to force the target out. Xiaoling Yu had already escaped the encirclement and fled far away. There are some things that he could not be completely sure of. After all, the information that the person in charge of the spying school branch knew was from other people's mouths. Whether it was the truth or not was still uncertain. Xiaoling Yu did not want to anger a celestial supremacy, so he did not make too much of fuss. He only wanted to see if Anya was still in the Heaven's Incense School. The person in charge of the Heaven's Incense School did not admit to it, so he could only carefully search for her himself. However, although the Heaven's Incense School encampment looked beautiful, there were hidden protective and alert restrictions everywhere. In his anxiety, Xiaoling Yu would naturally touch them. Occasionally, he would expose himself or be attacked. Fortunately, the invisibility divine robe's defense was quite strong. Xiaoling Yu did not suffer any injuries. Furthermore, he could immediately turn invisible again after being discovered. At this moment, the Heaven's Incense School encampment was even more lively than when Xiaoling Yu was wreaking havoc everywhere. The experts of the Heaven's Incense School all knew that an expert had snuck in, but they did not know where the intruder was. They could only search everywhere like headless flies. They mobilized all the disciples that could be mobilized to search carefully and increase their vigilance. Just as Xiaoling Yu was bitterly searching everywhere, the female immortal emperor called Mei Ling quietly came to a garden in the depths of the Heaven's Incense School encampment. Seeing that there was no one around, she walked in front of a rockery and chanted a few incantations. The rockery suddenly disappeared, and a cave entrance appeared. Mei Ling entered the cave and chanted a few more incantations. The rockery that had disappeared earlier reappeared and completely covered the cave entrance. What Mei Ling did not know was that when the cave entrance appeared, Xiaoling Yu, who was still moving around secretly in the Heaven's Incense School encampment, suddenly stopped in his tracks. Then, he frowned and rushed toward the garden. After all, Xiaoling Yu and Anya had dual cultivated for many years. Not only were they very familiar and sensitive to each other's auras, but they could also sense each other's presence as long as they were not too far away. They could also roughly determine each other's location. Just a moment ago, Xiaoling Yu suddenly sensed Anya's presence and approximate location. However, this feeling disappeared after just 2 breaths. As he rushed toward the garden, Xiaoling Yu thought angrily, "She really is still imprisoned here." However, the feeling just now was too short, and the feeling was rather vague. After Xiaoling Yu arrived at the garden, he could only be sure that Anya was nearby. However, he did not know where Anya was imprisoned. Even though Xiaoling Yu used his consciousness to observe every corner of this scene, his soul realm was not high enough. He could not find any clues. They already know that I'm here. They will definitely move Anya away or bring harm to Anya. In his anxiety, Xiaoling Yu did not care so much anymore. He immediately attacked repeatedly, randomly bombarding everything in the garden. The experts of the Heaven's Incense School naturally quickly surrounded him. However, they were blocked outside by nearly 2,000 armored puppets. These armored puppets were expressionless. As long as they saw someone approaching, they would immediately shoot out divine light to attack. Those with cultivation below the Emperor Realm could not get close at all. Even if an Emperor Realm expert wanted to force their way into the garden, they would have to pay a heavy price. The entire garden was in ruins, but Xiaoling Yu still hadn't discovered anything. At that moment, the middle-aged female cultivator, who was a late-stage Emperor-level cultivator, charged in. She asked coldly, "Sir, for you to possess such skills, you must be quite a figure in the immortal realm. Why did you barge into my Heaven's Incense School and wreak havoc?" Without distinguishing between right and wrong, Xiaoling Yu's face was ashen. He flew in front of the other party without fear and said, "Just now, I clearly sensed the existence of the person I'm looking for. She was detained nearby by you. You still have the face to say that I didn't distinguish between right and wrong? Seeing that Shaoling Yu didn't seem to be joking or lying, the female celestial emperor's expression changed. However, she still firmly said, Your Excellency must have sensed wrongly. If Your Excellency leaves now, I can ask Celestial Sovereign Lan Yao to not pursue Your Excellency's actions. Forget it. It's not like I haven't seen Immortal Blue Jade before. She can't do anything to me. Shaoling Yu disdainfully replied before saying, I advise you to hand her over. Otherwise, even if Immortal Blue Jade is here, your Heaven's Incense School won't be able to live in peace. The middle-aged female Immortal Emperor knew that he was not boasting. The close to 2,000 puppets around the garden could easily raise the Heaven's Incense School to the ground. Immortal Blue Jade was indeed not here. Even if the Heaven's Incense School could force this person and the puppets out, they would suffer great losses. The middle-aged female, Immortal Emperor pondered for a moment before saying, Tell these puppets to stop attacking first. I'll go out and ask. Shaoling Yu could not find where Anya was. Since she had decided to go out and ask, he naturally would not stop her. With a thought, the puppets remained motionless. Not long after, the middle-aged female Immortal Emperor brought a younger-looking fellow disciple over. The young female, Immortal Emperor, walked to a corner of the garden and chanted a few words. A cave entrance appeared. She's in here. Shaoling Yu discovered that he had sensed Anya's presence and rushed into the cave first. Mei Ling is too presumptuous. Let's see how she's going to deal with this. The middle-aged female Immortal Emperor's face was filled with anger as she followed Shaoling Yu into the cave. The cave was not very long. At the end, there were a few tightly shut secret rooms. Shaoling Yu arrived in front of one of the secret rooms and slammed open the stone door. Chapter 417. Stop! Shaoling Yu shouted, but she didn't dare to rush forward. Judging from the current situation, she could definitely take Anya's life in an instant. After all, Anya had just ascended for less than 10,000 years. It was impossible for her to be like Shaoling Yu, who didn't fear an immortal emperor. It could even be said that in front of an immortal emperor, Anya was as weak as a baby. I advise you to calm down. Otherwise, she will immediately turn into ashes in front of you. Mei Ling sneered. At this time, the middle-aged female immortal emperor also arrived at the door of the secret room. She said with an ugly expression, Junior Sister Mei Ling, what are you doing? Senior Sister Dan Rong, what I am doing is beneficial to our Heaven's Incense School. Mei Ling said calmly, I think you are asking for trouble. The middle-aged Dan Rong was so angry that her body trembled. She had already seen Shaoling Yu's strength. Senior Sister Dan Rong, are you going to stand on the side of an outsider? Mei Ling asked. I will only stand on the side of the Heaven's Incense School's rules. Dan Rong said angrily. Senior Sister Dan Rong, shut up. Quickly let her go. Dan Rong refused and refused to explain. Senior Sister Dan Rong, you are also a smart person. Can't you see the current situation? Even if I let her go, do you think this person will let it go? Mei Ling shook her head and said, I only know that if you let her go, there is still room for improvement. Otherwise, it will be difficult to deal with. Dan Rong was still calm. Senior Sister Dan Rong, I know that you are cautious, but don't be too timid. After all, our Heaven's Incense School is a top sect in the immortal world. Moreover, we have a celestial sovereign. What do we have to fear? Mei Ling said very confidently. Damn it. If Celestial Sovereign Lan Yao was here, wouldn't it be easier? Dan Rong cursed in her heart. Then, she said with a cold face, if Master was here, I am afraid she would personally end your life. I advise you not to be stubborn. Senior Sister Dan Rong, don't scare me. Since I dare to do this, there must be a reason why Master won't be angry. In fact, the reason why I did this was because Master told me to. Mei Ling had a fearless look on her face. What? Dan Rong's expression, and said, Master is a dignified celestial sovereign, a top expert of the three realms. How could she teach you to do this? Mei Ling smiled and said, Senior Apprentice Sister, you have a stubborn personality. That's why Master put you in charge of the sect's internal discipline. There are some things that Master won't tell you. Just because you don't know doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Huh? Shaolin Yu suddenly laughed. When Mei Ling's attention was diverted to him, because of the laughter, a cold light shot out from his body. By the time Mei Ling noticed the cold light, it was already right in front of her. Her reaction wasn't slow. Almost in the next moment, a handkerchief-shaped magic treasure blocked in front of her. However, the cold light easily penetrated the handkerchief and hit her left shoulder. It carried her body forward until it hit the wall of the secret room and stopped. At this moment, Shaolin Yu was already standing in front of Anya. Mei Ling first spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Then, she looked at her left shoulder and saw a scimitar that was as thin as a cicada's wing and almost transparent. The scimitar was launched without any warning and seemed to be invisible. Mei Ling did not expect her supreme-grade immortal handkerchief to be so easily broken, so she was easily hit. The transparent scimitar had been completely refined by Shaolin Yu with the purple-black chaotic true fire. It was more powerful in Shaolin Yu's hands than in Great Thief Nie Yu's. When it was launched by the original body, there was no aura fluctuation at all. It was the best way to launch a sneak attack. Mei Ling was like most bandits. Even though she had a hostage in hand, once she encountered a threat, the first thing she thought of was to save her own life, not to kill the hostage. Shaolin Yu suddenly launched a sneak attack just now because he was betting that Mei Ling would not kill Anya in a flash, but would protect herself first. Of course, he also heard that Dan Rong's persuasion was useless, so he decided to take the gamble. Anya's situation was very bad. Even though Mei Ling's palm had left her sweaty forehead, her eyes were still closed and her body collapsed on Shaolin Yu's back. She has been hit by the soul transfer seal. Without Senior Immortal Lan Yao's help, you can't save her. Although Mei Ling was nailed to the wall by the scimitar, she still smiled. Shaolin Yu's face became even gloomier. He immediately poured his mind into Anya's body. Anya's body basically did not suffer any damage, but her immortal nascent soul was a little withered. The unforgiving divine sword that Shaolin Yu gave her in the cultivation world quietly flew around Anya's pink and cute immortal nascent soul. When his mind entered Anya's sea of consciousness again, Shaolin Yu found that Anya's soul was currently shrouded in a misty fog. His mind could not penetrate the fog and could not detect the situation of Anya's soul. That fog should be the soul transfer seal that Mei Ling mentioned. It was a seal technique similar to a curse technique. Shaolin Yu did not know much about the soul transfer seal, but he knew that it was definitely not good for Anya. He said to Dan Rong, "Is it true that only Senior Immortal Lan Yao can remove this soul transfer seal?" Dan Rong's expression was very complicated. The soul transfer seal is our sect's secret technique. I have never practiced it, but I know that the soul transfer seal used by an immortal emperor can only be removed by an immortal venerable expert. Moreover, that immortal venerable must understand the seal technique of the cultivator who used the soul transfer seal. This soul transfer seal was used by junior martial sister Mei Ling. In the entire immortal realm, only Master can remove it. The anger in Shaolin Yu's heart burned uncontrollably. With a thought, the scimitar suddenly moved horizontally, cutting Mei Ling's body into two along her chest. Then, a ball of purple-black chaotic true fire flew out and turned the two halves of Mei Ling's body into ashes. Please return to Senior Immortal Lan Yao. If she is injured in any way before she returns, I want your entire Heaven's Incense School to be buried with her, Shaolin Yu said in a gloomy voice. Senior Martial Sister Mei Ling is already dead. I'm afraid that Master already knows. She should be back soon. Please wait patiently. Once Master returns, she will definitely remove the soul transfer seal for her, Dan Rong said helplessly. Shaolin Yu did not say anything. She carried Anya out of the secret room and out of the cave, but she did not leave the Heaven's Incense School. In the ruins of the Heaven's Incense School, Shaolin Yu sat cross-legged and held Anya's body in her arms. She quietly combed her hair and tidied her clothes. Her face was filled with tenderness and worry. The nearly 2,000 armored puppets were like loyal and brave guards. They surrounded Xiao Lingyu in the center, not allowing any Heaven's Incense School cultivators to come close. The Heaven's Incense School disciples were all in danger. No one dared to come close. Everyone was very worried and secretly prayed that Senior Immortal Lan Yao would return quickly. Ever since the Heaven's Incense School became a top sect in the immortal world, no one had dared to be so presumptuous in the Heaven's Incense School's territory. Moreover, the Heaven's Incense School could not do anything to her. The Heaven's Incense School disciples, who were originally proud of being a disciple of the Heaven's Incense School, now felt a deep sense of defeat. However, everyone believed that as long as Senior Immortal Lan Yao returned, all problems would be solved. There had been a lot of major events in the immortal world recently. First, the entrance to the Divine Tomb had appeared on the Divine Tomb continent. Then, the wondrous Pill School, which had controlled the Piaoxiang continent for countless years, had perished. These two events had caused the immortal world, which had been peaceful for many years, to gradually become lively. Now, the Heaven's Incense School's territory, with a top expert of the immortal world, Fairy Lan Yao, resided, had a male cultivator. No one dared to move, which surprised the cultivators of the immortal world. Paper could not wrap fire. Xiao Lingyu had been in the Heaven's Incense School's territory for less than 2 years when the news quickly spread in the immortal world. Fairy Lan Yao only returned to the Heaven's Incense School after 200 years. Before she saw Xiao Lingyu, she first saw the 2,000 armored puppets. Her originally angry expression became even more unsightly because she recognized these armored puppets. Fairy Lan Yao's appearance was very good, and she was also very playful. Although she had cultivated for countless years, there was still a hint of childishness on her face. She was the dream lover of many experts in the immortal world. However, at this moment, her face was frosty and her beautiful eyes, which were as narrow as blades, were staring at Xiao Lingyu. Flying into the air, Fairy Lan Yao said to Xiao Lingyu, "It's really searching high and low only to find it without any effort. I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to me." Xiao Lingyu didn't get up. He was still sitting cross-legged with Enya in his arms. He said coldly, "Let's not talk about the past. I only want to ask you, Fairy, why did you use the soul transfer seal on my wife? Do you want to remove the soul-shifting seal?" Fairy Lan Yao sneered arrogantly and said, "Don't think that just because you have some ability, you could be presumptuous in front of a senior immortal. Everyone below the senior immortal is an ant. You are just a slightly stronger ant. Do I need to explain anything to an ant? If that's the case, then I'll let Fairy see the means of an ant." Xiao Lingyu put Anya into his divine palace. At the same time, he commanded all the armored puppets to attack with divine light. Fairy Blue Jade's strong words made it clear that she would not easily compromise with Xiao Lingyu. Xiao Lingyu was even more unlikely to give up and leave. Even if he could not beat a senior immortal, when a real man encountered such a situation, even if he lost his life, why not fight? Countless divine lights soared into the sky like thousands of arrows. Even Fairy Lan Yao had to be careful when dealing with them. In the Divine Tomb, Fairy Lan Yao had seen the power of these divine light attacks. However, there were only 2,000 armored puppets here. Fairy Blue Jade didn't dodge. She waited for the divine light to get close before gently waving her sleeve. A colorful silk circled around her body and blocked all of the divine light. However, her body was blown back several thousand feet. At this moment, Xiao Lingyu had already disappeared into nothingness. He quickly pounced towards Fairy Lan Yao. "Your divine clothes are divine, but they are useless against me." That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.